All right.
Before we begin, we owe an apology to the people of West Virginia.
Do we?
Sparky, I got your DMs.
What have
Yeah,
we done?
we made a shitty joke about West Virginia dental records.
I don't remember doing this.
Well,
I
Roz
don't
made
remember
it.
doing this either.
Oh, okay.
Roz made
fine.
it. So, I apologize for that. Roz apologizes for that, even though he doesn't fucking remember it.
Yeah, I don't remember doing that.
I know you don't, buddy. That's because you drink too much.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Your
now that
Honor,
we've said
I was nowhere near the scene. I was not in West Virginia at that time. I was.
the greatest state we have, man.
Justin, you know the slide is only showing like 2/3 of it on Zencaster. Is it recording right?
Oh, fuck.
God damn it, dude.
I only thought
keep
to
it.
look now.
Keep it.
There we go.
That looks nice.
Yeah. So
Wow.
what you see on the screen before you is...
We have to do introductions first.
And we have to talk about how good open back headphones are.
Yeah.
You guys like tasty airy mids. Yes.
Yeah. Can I air my grievances against Bose now before I talk to their
can.
customer service? All right.
All right. Introductions first, then headphones.
Yes. Hello and welcome to Well, There's Your Problem. It's a podcast about engineering disasters with slides. I'm Justin Rosniak. I'm the person who's talking right now. My pronouns are he and him. Okay, go.
I'm Alice Caldwell-Kelly. I'm the person who's talking now. My pronouns are she and her. Yay, Liam.
Yay, Liam. Hi, my name is Liam Anderson. My pronouns are also he and him.
We have a guest
We
from
do have a guest.
Podcasting as Praxis.
Yes.
Hello, guest.
Hi, my name is Rob. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm the person you are hearing now.
Hell yeah.
Also, fuck you, Bose.
Yeah, let's hear it. Did
Yeah,
sounds
okay,
for
so the
buy
thing
other
is,
sound equipment.
Well, the reason why we're talking about headphones is because I have been spending about 10 minutes yelling at these two, my colleagues, for the fact that we have been running this podcast for what feels like 15 years at this point, and neither of them has a pair of closed back headphones, which means I can always hear myself in the background and we have to edit it out, or Devin has to edit it out. So please, God, guys, just like...
What's up, Alice?
buy closed back headphones. They don't even have to be expensive.
Oh, they're gonna be expensive.
They make my ears pop. It's annoying.
I like my airy
It's
mids.
gonna make your ears pop in a minute. What you see on the screen before you is
What's wrong with my airy mids?
a large amount of limestone.
Can't answer the question.
Fucking various other geological oddities, ice and snow. And the
Yes.
3 words, big deadly rock.
Which it used to just say big deadly, which I actually think is objectively funnier.
Yeah, the McDonald's Big Deadly.
It actually used to say Big Deadly Rock Land, but the land fell over.
Yeah, it was part of like a sort of like a house building experiment. Not very widely taken up, those apartments.
Yeah.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about Mount Everest, or Chomolungma, if you prefer, and why it's not necessary. Well, all the ways it can kill you, and
Of which there are many.
Yeah.
so many. It's another biome one. After the caves, we're now like the tallest mountain in the world.
Don't go in the caves. Don't go in the mountain.
The caves. Don't talk about the caves. It freaks me out just talking about the fucking caves.
The caves freak me out. Yeah.
As you said, it's Chomolungma.
Chomolungma is the like
Chomolungma.
God.
Nepalese name for it, I think.
Okay.
It
yeah,
means
it
like
is.
Holy Mother.
It's a motivation to get you up to the top. If you get knocked down, you can get up again. Yeah.
He takes a whiskey drink. He takes a lager drink.
Yeah.
Hopefully, he does not do that when he's mountain climbing.
All right. So before we talk about Mount Everest, we have to do the goddamn news.
This fucking guy.
Our big boy Fetterman has been going hard in on
That sucks.
excusing Israeli war crimes. That seems to be like his main thing right now. It's very frustrating because now all the funny parts about him aren't funny anymore.
No,
Yeah.
that
It's
sucks.
sad to see a guy with a hoodie on just do war crimes. You know,
Yeah.
hoodies
Normally,
no
I
longer
do
okay.
quite a few war crimes, but I am a private citizen, so I can just do whatever I want.
Yeah.
The thing is, he's breaking the dress code for doing war crimes and endorsing war crimes, which is,
Mhm.
that is progress. even if the kind of progress we would like to see is fewer, ideally no war crimes.
Right, we would like to see no war crimes, but
Yeah, I mean,
can't have
I
anything nice.
think the top level headline with Fetterman is that you have to stop doing strong male friendships, and you have to stop checking in on your friends, because I need this man's mental health to be worse urgently.
Well, yeah, I gotta wonder. I mean, so no one seems to have come out in favor of a ceasefire in the Senate,
Dick
except
Durbin.
Dick Durbin did. Yeah,
Dick Durbin.
Yeah,
I'm just
Bernie
wondering
Sanders as well, just like scummed his way out of that one.
Yes,
what kind of sword of Damocles do they have hovering over these guys that prevents any of them from having? It forces them all to be in lockstep with the same shitty foreign policy.
Fucking sucks.
I mean, some it's just that they just like it. Like I the one guy
There's no
I won't get
consequences to
over is Brian Mast, the guy who got his like legs and dick and balls blown off in, I think, Afghanistan, and then went to Israel on like a volunteer basis to go and like stack blankets for the IDF for a couple of weeks. And
What?
This is like a volunteer
Christ.
program that they have that you can go and like they
Birthright,
tease
but
it with like
worse.
with like hot IDF girls. You can go and like work on base for a couple of weeks lifting boxes. And he wore his IDF uniform, if you can call it
Sure
that,
did.
from that experience in Congress.
I saw that. That was
Yeah.
he was
that
a
was
Florida
weird.
guy, right? Am I right in saying
I
that?
think so.
Yeah.
But
I mean-
yeah. So he's been doing that, and it all feels like a new low. And once again, I continue to feel like my brain is melting out of my ears.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just
It's
don't do that
it's-
anywhere near the cenotaph, Alice, because that's a sad place for memories.
Yeah. Britain's been insane in its own way, of course. And today, day of recording, this culminated with the idea that like Hamas-affiliated peace activists were going to do some kind of like terrorist peace demonstration
What?
on
Yeah.
Armistice Day, which obviously you can't use Armistice Day to protest for peace, because that would be antithetical to the whole point of it, which is that war is good.
Yeah, World War I was cool, and it's fun that they're going to do it again in Gaza.
Yeah, it's interesting, the stuff that like we've just kind of like slipped back into the history books. Like World War I is good is just like accepted now in Britain widely. Fucking
What are the-
Blackadder Goes Forth was the high watermark of the opposite of that.
Yeah. Every time I read literature about the period, it's just like a famous Five novel. There's just some hijinks, and then they gather for tea and all is well.
Yeah. So World War I was good, and now Germany is like
Being German, returning to its original roots. Yeah.
Yes.
When you see the Chancellor of Germany on a cover of a magazine saying we need mass deportations because of an enemy within, I don't think that that's good.
I've
that's
actually seen this
generally
movie before, and I recall it not going so well.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the Germans learned their lesson, which is don't do it to the Jews again, right? Nothing beyond
Thanks,
that.
boys.
Yeah. It's some kind of mad shit that he was proposing that like all Muslims in Germany have to like take a loyalty oath or like pinky promise to be good or something. It's insane. It's just mad.
Yeah, loyalty oath to Israel, and like this is the maddening
Fucking what?
thing.
No, bring that back. What?
like this is the like really maddening thing, right? Is I remember all of like a few months ago when this idea that like you had like dual loyalty to your own country and to Israel was only an anti-Semitic slur, and now it's both an anti-Semitic slur and something we are earnestly
thing we have to
demanding of
do.
people. Yeah. I don't know, man. It's all so
baffling.
fucking dire.
Yeah.
I hope this guy. I really do. All this like just this. I swear to God, it's like genuinely such an embarrassment that he was ever elected in the first place. And there's like,
Well, did you see the other guy?
yeah.
To be fair,
it's true.
we voted against a Muslim.
Yeah. I mean, depends whether Dr. Oz would have endorsed Erdogan's sort of condemnation of Israel, putting in a real like geopolitical bind there.
Yeah, exactly.
All I'm saying is I'm calling on our like Cuban allies to sort of speed up research on the Havana ray gun and just like get a bigger,
you guys
better
gotta move
version.
that shit along.
Gotta point it right at the Senate. Use the foreign policy change ray gun. And it forces all of them to to vote for ceasefire and then end the embargo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll probably do a
Or,
bunch
you
of
know,
other stuff too.
Yeah, or
No,
possibly
we'll be
just that
pleased.
scene from Scanners, and I'm good with that too. We'll just
Yeah, I'll also take that. Hey, you guys, can I borrow $4,000 real quick?
Are you looking at the Metzers?
No.
You're looking at the fucking headphones made out of like Stradivarius wood,
Yeah,
aren't you?
yeah. Unobtainium and myrrh.
Gotta get one of those high fidelity XLR cables made out of gold too.
Not the
solid
XLR
gold
cable I'm
connectors.
rocking that I think is from Amazon that says professional low noise. Oh boy, microphone cable. It's wrapped around my microphone because I do cable management good.
This is going to relate to.
Hey, remember how you
next-
mounted your hard drives? Remember that?
You
I remember
you remember
that.
what an impact that had on the sound quality of the episodes?
A big one.
All right, this is all going to relate strongly, I feel, to our baffling next news.
In other news,
yeah.
We did it.
Thank you.
A hearty congratulations from people who will never ever achieve such a thing, and my dad will always be sad at me.
Wow, my levels are blown out when I do that.
Thank you to 100,000 of you
You
for
stupid fucks.
smashing that like, share, and subscribe button.
yeah,
We are going to get some plaques off of this, and I'm very excited.
we're gonna have a YouTube plaque.
Yeah, the next step is world conquest. So the next milestone is like 1 million. So if all of you make 9 people off the street subscribe to the podcast,
Yes, every
Just
single one
walk
of you.
up to
This is your
random people in
task.
the street and just start talking about this podcast.
yeah,
It will only end well.
Yes. You will not be incarcerated, we hope.
this is sort of like I think in order to get there, the only way we're getting to 1 million is sort of cultic practices. And I'm in favor of this. Go out and convert people.
Yeah.
Can I ask you like
get it before Alan Fisher does?
Can I ask sort of a practical plaque question? Do you guys get one each, or is it like one, and is it like a Highlander scenario where it's like you
have to
it's going to
order
be some
more.
headings and then
This is bullshit. They issue you one, and then if you want any more, you have to email the company that makes them and be like, I swear to God, this is real. I have 100,000 YouTube subscribers. Can I buy X more of you? And obviously we need like one for me, one for Liam, one for Justin, one for the Activate Windows logo, and one for Devon. So like that's a big expense,
That's great though. I hope that's tax
success.
deductible. That like you can walk up to the tax office and say, "I'm paying less because Luke's shiny plaque." I think that's really good.
I want one of the ones that they have to make up for like YouTubers back when YouTubers were still a thing, who did like crazy numbers. We had to invent this like golden ruby plaque specially for PewDiePie after he looked at a dead Japanese guy and went, "Cool, check it out, like and subscribe," and like 25 trillion people did.
Oh yeah, when he got the oak leaves and crosses underneath his plaque.
The most cancelable system of like YouTube promotions. Yeah.
I thought that was a different guy who was looked at the dead body.
Yeah, wasn't that Logan Paul?
Oh
Yeah,
are they not
something
the same
yeah.
guy?
They're all basically all the same guy.
Logan Paul, there we go. I just searched suicide
Every day
Paul.
of my life, I find out that there's a guy called the Dirch Official who has 2 trillion subscribers. I have never heard of him, and like kids in secondary schools are worshipping him like a god.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I want that for myself. Not the worship, but I do want the plaque.
Yeah. I
I
don't
think
know.
you can
I don't know
have
about.
both. I think you should
I
commit
want
to
the
both.
$10 million. I want the 10 million subscriber plaque. That looks.
I
pretty
don't
fucking
want to
sick.
be worshipped by teenagers.
I
No,
also
just the
wouldn't
plaque.
like that. Yeah. I have one more announcement, which is that I'll save it. Never mind. It doesn't
Okay,
matter.
cool, great, fantastic. We're so good at this.
That's
is
a
the thing,
teaser.
right? So sometimes people are like, we're
I'll
gonna
tell the story. I got recognized at a funeral from this podcast.
Yeah.
God.
Emily, if you're listening, thanks for that. Yeah,
Incredible.
I was at Corinne's uncle's funeral with like a billion fucking people, and it was my birthday. And Corinne's cousin said, "Happy birthday, Liam." And this person was just like, "Are you Liam from Well, There's Your Problem?" And my brain fucking turned off.
Nothing is beyond our reach. Yeah, I mean, the other thing is like a lot of channels do like rewards or like they trail something and kind of like in recompense for your sacrifice and subscribing and having to get like our bullshit notifications. Are we going to do anything special for 100,000 subscribers? And the answer is no, absolutely not.
I've already released the nerve gas, actually.
Okay. It was the nerve gas.
It was the nerve gas.
You start giving people things, and they just start expecting more from you, and that way madness lies.
We like to maintain a hierarchical relationship here.
Yeah.
But yeah, and earnest thank you to the fans at this time.
Thanks. Also, eat shit.
Yeah.
Please don't unsubscribe. Yeah. Please don't unsubscribe.
Continue subscribing. We love you. Also, we hate you.
Yeah, we have to ensure this is a professional relationship.
That's right.
Don't get parasocial. We hate you. We think you're scum. But please subscribe.
Also, can you please sign my morning card while we're here? Because I just want your signature on something professional.
Oh, the people who are like, "Hey, will you sign my Philadelphia teacher ID?"
That's really sweet.
That was sweet. Yeah,
we signed what like an emergency services ID one time.
I'll sign anything. Yeah,
true.
It's I'll sign anything, and we'll also sponsor any dumb thing you can come up with.
Extremely easy man to defraud.
I was
Anything
about
you put in
to
front
say,
of him, he will sign.
It's not fraud. We had a race team.
Contracts.
Yeah,
we have a race team.
We do. Those guys rule.
Anyway, that was the goddamn news.
All right, I immediately pivot into insulting the fans.
We just did that.
I'm gonna do it some more.
All right, so get your 90,000 subscriber plaque. Congratulations.
So some of you are looking at Mount Everest and you're going, "How is that an engineering disaster?" Right? Like,
shut up.
That's my answer. Shut up. I hear you crying about this in the comments because you're a baby. This is a picture of you about to post your little comment about how is this an engineering disaster.
You're taking my shtick.
These guys are like running out of ideas. They're running out of engineering disasters.
I'm writing Katrina right now.
And now they're just doing whatever they feel like. Well, next slide, please.
Doing that the whole time.
My answer. Yes. My answer comes in two parts. This is part one. And the first part of the answer is, you think this shit is easy? You want to get up here and try and do my job? Yeah, that's what I thought. Why aren't you doing Air Borat Flight 343? Fuck you. All right, I'm sorry the fucking Tupolev flew into the tractor. I'm sorry it was carrying all of your dictators' single malt. We'll get to it, right? Like, and that's like only one half of the comments we get. The other half of the comments we get are, why aren't you doing US American Flight 345? And it's like, I don't. Yeah, we'll get to that too. I'm sorry the pilot who hadn't slept in 72 hours like flew a shitload of McKinsey people who are going off site to fire people in person into another kind of tractor because the magic tube that tells the computer not to crash the plane got ice in it. We'll get to it.
You stole my whole shtick. I am redundant now.
Listen, I was charging the Liam.
Pilot like a Plaque 2 though, because that's pretty heroic right there.
It does, on a philosophical level, shut the fuck up. But on a more practical level,
just imagining all the lights going off.
It's a disaster show. There's also like do you know how hard some of these are to fucking write? Because A, Roz is a big baby, and it's like, oh, we need an expert. Like, yeah, probably, but also shut the fuck up. B, I have been writing Katrina for 1 trillion years because if I fuck it up, we're gonna get screamed at, and Spencer Hall is gonna come north and beat me to death with his own shoes.
Just imagining.
Get Katrina right. Roz, speaking of
also,
talk about Katrina.
In defense of your engineering podcast, I will say that at least part of this is 100% about engineering, and if it isn't, you can go tell Veil of Sherpas that it isn't, and they'll beat you to death as they should
with their own snowshoes.
We'll get there. Yeah, we'll get there with crampons.
Imagining the Air Borat flight right before it crashes, all the alarms are going off.
Right into a mountainside.
My wife. My wife.
I'm sorry I said Air Borat. I'm going to have to apologize to Central Asia now. Look, aviation disasters specifically, sometimes it's hard to find a compelling narrative for them. I'm not an aviation girl. I'm not like fucking mentor pilot or whatever, and they're all named like Air something flight number, and it's like
Air Rectum flight 455.
Exactly. So and they can't all be Japan Airlines flight filling with liquid shit, you know?
As pilots, this is exactly the situation we're trained to avoid.
Think filling with shit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my second half of the answer is the entire rest of the podcast. Next slide, please. Rob and I sort of like wrote this half and half between ourselves, and all of you are hostages.
If you're wondering what I'm doing here, by the way, I'm an entirely amateur mountaineer, and I haven't done any of this shit. So, you know, I like it. I think it's interesting.
More than any of us.
I'm a very accomplished mountaineer when I search Google Maps.
Over a period of like tens of millions of years, India, which used to be like detached, smacked into the Eurasian plate, traveling northward. And then there was a plain in between China and India. You can see here China's the bit on the right, India's the bit on the left. Used to be a plain in between them. India's going north, the Eurasian plate's going south. These two plates smacked into each other and formed the Himalayas. It's a mountain ridge. These are the tallest mountains in the world. They're beautiful, and they're actually
They are incredible. They are just magnificent things. They are some of the most breathtaking spectacles on this planet. It's amazing.
Real quick, Roz, can you do me a solid?
What?
Take your goddamn allergy meds.
Okay.
So these are baby mountains too. Like they're only 50 million years old. Which
they
is
used
like
to be
nothing.
shorter than the Appalachians.
But this is the thing. The Appalachians are like 500 million years old. They're 10
they're
times old.
They're older than the Atlantic Ocean, as is the Susquehanna River.
Yeah. Like the Himalayas are like it means home of snow, by the way, which I think is cool.
Well, that's poetic. Yeah. There's a lot of it.
There's a lot of snow. They're so
not as much snow as they used to be, which is kind of terrifying.
It's
that's
not worrying. Shut
up.
Hey, shut up.
We'll get there. But they're so young geologically that like there are birds that evolved to fly over them rather than change their migration routes. Demoiselle cranes. They're beautiful. There's like some like bar-necked like cranes as well that fly over them.
Just fly over. They can just fly 30. That's commercial airliner height.
Yeah, I was about to say you're gonna get a hell of a surprise when that bird strike happens.
Just like inhaling a bunch of like cranes into the engine of your 747 or whatever. Yeah. If we go to the next slide, we can get a
good luck finding an airfield.
it's a political map, which is in a kind of like Akan Bharat is like labeled in the top right India geographical map. Not all of this is India. I just got this off of an Indian map.
There's some weird nationalism going on.
Yeah. My than heart a few turned to Hindutva.
More than a few disputed borders here.
Hey guys, what if what we did was we went to the highest, shittiest place in the world and just fought over it endlessly?
Some sick fighting up here, like guys with like pickaxe handles kicking each other off the edge of glaciers.
Yes,
but yeah. So the Himalayas comprise. There's a tiny bit in India. There's Bhutan, and then most of it's Nepal and Tibet, which is part of China under protest. And pre-European settlement, Tibet was like administered by various Chinese empires, had its own empire for a bit, ended up a Buddhist theocracy after the Boxer Revolution, and stayed that way until China invaded in the 50s. And then Nepal was a monarchy until 2006, pretty old monarchy, and then one of the kids went gamer mode with an AR-15, and just kind of like took out a bunch of their own royal family.
As one does.
Well,
unexpected political development, to say the least.
That's sort of that's a reverse Bud Dwyer right there.
Yeah. Also, a lot of the politics in Nepal, which was a constitutional monarchy, is now just a democracy, is now just a republic. Is various flavors of Maoists, which is wild because you get moderate Maoists, which is kind of what it is. You have like a Maoist administration that is like very, very keen to keep tourism up. This will be a problem later.
Feed them into the mountain that craves blood.
Yeah. Unlike in the Americas, there isn't like a documented history of pre-European mountaineering, as far as I can tell. It's more that you work around the mountains, you live and work in the valleys and stuff, and the mountains are like mostly considered sacred to like one
Yeah.
deity or
And
another.
also, like some of the valleys that these people have been living in since like forever, basically, are higher than any mountain range in like the continental United States, basically. So like their mode of being is just like what you would consider maybe the adventure of your lifetime to get to.
Yeah, lots of like carrying very heavy loads over like very dangerous mountain passes and like very fast rivers as well because they're glacier runoff.
Yeah.
Very, very steep.
Yes,
So
Roz, it
this
is very steep.
this isn't like very steep in terms of rivers. It's like it makes it go faster.
Yeah. If
It's,
you want to,
it's also like a notoriously like poor country. Like it's one of the poorest in the world, I think. And like the rare occurrence in also because it doesn't have that much. Like it has mountains and some water, and that that kind of them's the breaks. There's not they don't have like a big port, or like they don't sit on an important trade route or anything. They have like these passes and not much else going on.
a little bit of like subsistence agriculture and stuff. If we,
It's interesting that they consider it sacred, the mountain sacred, as opposed to like the traditional European way of thinking about mountains up until like sort of the
Tunnel through
Romantic
it?
period, which is sort of these mountains are a goddamn nuisance and we wish we could be rid of them.
I mean,
no one rid me of this meddlesome mountain. It's just a guy with a jackhammer, some dynamite.
Petrarch inventing mountaineering, and then this sort of product of modernity of like mountaineering for pleasure. If we want to put a marker in, I'm sort of eyeballing this, but if you see the little bump top left of the K in Kanchenjunga, which is the third highest mountain in the world, that's where Everest is. It's on the border between Nepal and Tibet. It's like the border runs through the summit, I believe. So like half of it's in Tibet and half of it's in Nepal. Next slide, please. All right, we also got to talk about these guys. These are Sherpa people.
The drip.
Yeah, I was about to say they look real good.
They are massively cool. Look at that.
Every photo I've seen of Sherpa men, they've like at least one guy has been wearing a cowboy hat. That's like something they have very, very keenly adopted from the West, and it looks cool as hell. You have to salute a pro cowboy hat culture.
Yes.
And this is like an ethnic group, it's like 100,000 people, maybe more. And generally in the West, like Sherpa means, we tend to treat it as Nepalese for guy who hauls my stupid ass up the mountain.
Yes.
And has the decency not to leave me there, even though he probably should.
Exactly. Because we are like racist pigs, and we have this like way of typifying societies. Like it was a thing where particularly in the British Empire, where we were like, okay, well this is like a warrior tribe, and this is like whatever. In order to pick who got to do what in like imperial administration and stuff, and the Sherpa kind of got like pigeonholed into being like smiling, helpful climbing people, which sure, but it's an ethnic group. There's more going on than that. And they live and work in these valleys, which has adapted them in a lot of ways, including genetically to be like very good at climbing and living at high altitudes. And later on, as we'll see, this becomes a way for them to like gain employment through hauling people up mountains.
They have to use their superhuman abilities to compensate for weak, pale European bodies.
Pretty much. Yeah,
I'm sedentary.
Yeah, I mean, like, pretty much any major European expedition of, like the sort of, first half of the 20th century, even into like the 60s, and maybe even 70s, would have not only like Sherpa guides, but like a huge number of porters who would like carry all of their shit.
Yeah.
Still a thing,
Do
but
it yourself, you fucking
Still a
pussies.
big thing. Like a lot of like, if you even if you don't do like the full on mountaineering stuff, like we're going to be talking about, like a lot of people just go to Nepal to like do. It's a very famous sort of tourist walk to go to Everest Base Camp and back, and then most people already have porters, and especially if you do like longer stuff, you really don't need to do any kind of summit to like employ Sherpas and porters and all that stuff. And also, there's certainly if you're mountaineering, it's also a legal requirement that you have Sherpas with you. You must, by law, have guides and Sherpas and porters, local people with you.
You got to keep the economy stimulated, apart from anything else.
Right.
Do they have like a Sherpa union?
We'll get to that. That's an important point.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so for now, I'll confine myself to saying that the early mountaineering stuff, I enjoyed reading Annapurna, which is the French first attempt to summit that mountain. These guys are like universally treated terribly, especially the porters. And it's taken for granted that they will remain cheerful in all circumstances, up to and including like falling off a mountain to their deaths.
Oof.
Cool.
Yeah, they usually don't like rate and mention like some of the stuff with Annapurna is just like, you know, diary entries where it's like, yeah, another one of the guys like fell into a river and drowned today. It's like, okay, whatever.
They are. I mean, it's changing now in the last decade, I would say. But any time before that, it was just like we got up the mountain, and by we mean a bunch of white people, and don't you ask any questions about anything else?
Right.
Exactly. Next slide, please. All right, so this is about the colonization of India. Do not colonize India, first of all. Easy mistake to make, but don't try your best to avoid it. But that's something that we did. And having done so, we, Britain, then got involved in this like so-called Great Game with Russia, where we were like, any day now, the Russians are going to like sweep down into Central Asia, and they're going to try and take India off of us, which has made us very wealthy. And we don't want them to do that. Therefore, we're going to have to do a bunch of intrigue. Some really interesting intrigue. Like the word pundit for like someone, like a commentator, makes its way into English. It means school teacher originally.
That sounds like a great alternate history where India becomes part of the Soviet Union.
Oh,
I mean, it had moments where it was sort of like potentially in the balance.
Yeah.
But
so we had these guys pundits who were sort of like locally recruited spies who were sent into Nepal because Nepal and Tibet were closed to foreigners at this time until like 1904, I want to say, when we negotiated a treaty with them. And yeah, because what we wanted to do was to survey India. This is very useful, like militarily, scientifically, all of this. We did like a lot of like geological survey. And we wanted to survey Nepal and Tibet as well. And because they wouldn't let us in, we just like recruited some local spies and with gadgets, even like fucking specially adapted prayer beads to use for like measuring distances and stuff. Like undercover as monks and holy men. It's a wild bit of history. But yeah, mostly what we tried to do was to survey Tibet and Nepal by distance. Use like a telescope, whatever. You look at the mountains, which you can see because they're very tall, and you go, how tall do you think that is, and try and measure it with maths. A lot of guys got malaria doing this, by the way. Pretty miserable conditions.
That's just part of the job back when surveying was, a very manual effort. You're gonna, wind up in pretty strange places and get weird diseases.
Oh yeah. Fun fact: the first star on the CIA's wall of dead CIA guys is an Ivy League guy who tried to like hike over the border into Tibet and got airholed by some Chinese border guards.
Oh boy!
Well,
so like from the 1800s to the 1950s, very very difficult to sort of like get into at times. But yeah, so the highest of these peaks. Very obvious.
Peak 15.
Peak 15. And this guy War at the Geological Survey went, how can I sort of curry favor here? He's like, well, I'll name it after my boss. And
incredible,
this is
fucking incredible. Like,
just that's so funny.
Well, I mean, you have 100,000 subscribers now. You should get like many things, geographical things that are named after you.
Mount, well, there's your problem. Yeah.
Yes.
Just a never-ending avalanche.
I was about to say they never gave K2 a proper name.
Yeah, this is an interesting thing because K2 people have tried about the same time that like the government of Nepal like really started pushing for like Chomolungma Satyagraha for Everest. People like went back and thought, well, how can we like decolonize K2? Why is it called that? And legitimately, it's like in the back of Beyond so much that no one has bothered to name it in a way that anyone's recorded before just K2.
Yeah.
But Peak 15, Chomolungma, was named after this guy on the left, George Everest, who was the head of the Geological Survey of India. Pronounced his name Everest, and one of the reasons why he didn't like the idea of calling it Mount Everest is because nobody can fucking pronounce my name. And they're gonna get it wrong. And yeah, he was touching the lathe of heaven at that moment because it's Mount Everest now, irrespective of how this dead guy pronounced his name, which was Everest.
Also, I think that it's still befitting that we call it Mount Everest, and get this colonialist pig's name hundreds of years after. Like he could go suck it forever and into eternity. That's good.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. If we go to the next slide, we negotiated access to Nepal in 1904, and immediately, pretty much, having begun this, thing of like mountaineering and mountaineering for pleasure in Europe, and hikes, and climbed a lot of the Alps. You had like this phenomenon of alpinism and alpinists.
Yeah, this sort of starts going around like, it has a long history, but around like the age of when like English public school boys started going on the Grand Tour, and they'd come to Switzerland and the Rhone Valley, and they'd see all these incredible mountains, and some of them would like go up there, including, I've forgotten her name, but one incredibly cool woman who did Mont Blanc in like a full-on like Victorian hoop skirt, which is just like incredibly boss. Which is just very, very cool. But that's where it all comes from. And then around that time, they also start, because it's also a nationalist thing, they start climbing up all these big peaks, because if you're, I don't know, the Englishman on the biggest peak, that means you're better than, the German Empire or the French Empire, and so on and so forth. So it has like public schoolboy mixed in with weird Victorian, nationalism. It's all baked sort of into that cake.
It's also interestingly because the kingdom then of Nepal was able to sort of like play all of these powers off against each other by issuing like generally like one license for an expedition per year that would rotate nationality. So if the British don't do X mountain in 1924, then the Swiss get to try it in 25, and the French in 26 or whatever, and you have these series of British expeditions into Nepal, which survey a lot of routes because you have to hike to these places in the first place. You have to like map out these mountains. You have to like break trails to get there, and then that's before you're even like at the base of it, looking at it, trying to find a way up it. But pretty quickly, like Everest is sort of like gone for, and we have a bunch of like reconnaissance expeditions. Mostly, I'm going to talk about this guy on the left. This is George Mallory, who looks like a gayer George Russell. It's genuinely striking, the resemblance. It's all chin. They give you one of those chins in public school, I feel, sometimes. And yeah, he was a World War I veteran, like gifted mountaineer, teacher at one point, sort of Charterhouse actually. And ultimately, he was part of an expedition in 24 that tried to summit, and he and his partner just disappeared.
It's one of the great enduring sort of minor mysteries whether or not they made the actual summit. No, but I mean, obviously nobody knows because they didn't live to tell the tale. They vanished up in the cloud and were. I'm not going to say never seen again, but nobody knows what happened. But on May 1st, 1999, an American mountaineer called Comrade Anker, who, by the way, is a legend among the serious mountaineers, they found his body below the yellow band, which is above 8,000 meters, but well below the summit. We'll get to where that is on the mountain. But in all probability, they did not make it. Although I think at the time that was Anker's expedition to like discover more about this expedition and how they did it. So among the things they did is they recreated all like the period like mountaineering outfits, like the guys in the picture on the right, and they tried to see if purely on like a material technical basis you could do it. And Anker said that you could probably do it if the weather didn't blow up in your face. That like they had the requisite technological skills and the ropes, and it was all a zillion times heavier than the stuff is now, but technically speaking it would have been possible.
Did they know to do things like bring supplemental oxygen? Did they have the technology to do that at the time?
No, they just went.
Wow.
So far as I know, Mallory has no supplemental oxygen.
This is a sort of like it's also like pure alpinism, right? Where as it kind of like evolved as a doctrine, right? Which is that you assault the mountain, right? You hike up to the base of it. You go, I think I can climb up that way, and then you just do it. Right?
Mountaineering, open up. Mountaineering, open up.
Yeah, exactly.
And continue the assault. You install like a cable lift. You add like a little mountain hut with that serves that has a restaurant in it. You do the full Swiss thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is like
it's
one
great
of...
here.
You should come visit. It's lovely. Those huts are great. I love it here.
Oh, I like Switzerland a lot. I've only been once. It was a long time ago, but it was really good.
Yeah, so this is one of like two schools of mountaineering. I'm going to talk about the other one in a bit, but this is like alpinism or like assault style mountaineering.
Yes, it's normally called like siege alpinism. It's literally like you get all the shit you need, all the food you need, all the ropes you need, all the everything you need. You put it in a big pile, and then like you move the pile from the biggest pile to one camp above, where you build another big pile, and then once you've stockpiled all your stuff and built a long line of ropes, you build another camp above that, and so on and so forth. And every time the pile gets a little bit smaller, we drag everything up, and then like once you're fully secured, you hop on to the next thing. That's sort of how that goes. That's how they did it, and that's also how the first summit was achieved.
Yeah,
maybe install an escalator.
Yeah.
Roz outsmarts the mountain by simply building over it.
There are two main routes up Everest that are sort of like popularly done. There's the one that almost everyone does now, and then there's a route from the north through Tibet that for a long time was like politically impossible. But that one has like a long fixed ladder into it that a Chinese team put in '75 that you just have to like climb up it for long periods.
So yeah, because I have engineer brain. I'm like, we could probably stick a cog railway on there and make this a lot easier.
How do cog railways do with massive avalanches and falling ice cubes the size of several houses?
I assume
you build a snow shed. This is a solved problem.
Part of the reason why I put Mallory in here is because he sort of gave mountaineering its raison d'etre in terms of like why climb this bullshit mountain particularly, which is because it's there, right? This is the kind of like existential challenge. Is the thing is there, therefore climb it for like pleasure and achievement.
It speaking purely for me, it is true. Like I like to go into a big mountain and stand on top of things, and I don't think you need a better reason than that. Because it is there, because it looks cool, and you want to go up there and see what's up there, and like it's incredibly cool and good. I mean, the stuff that happens on Everest, not so much so, but
We'll get there.
just the doing is very, very cool. And I think because it's there is still the single best reason. Before we move off this slide, like tiny side note, I found this while doing a little bit of reading about Mallory, is that one of his teammates included a veteran rower from Oxford, I want to say, and an inventor called Sandy Irvine, who before he went up to Everest, I can't remember if he survived or not, but he had also applied for a patent for a new kind of machine gun. And I promise you to find the patent because that would be cool, but I could locate it in time.
Everest machine gun. I like that. Like I have a slide about outfits later. These guys aren't dressed like this for the photo. They're dressed like this because this is what they were climbing in. Like and wearing a tie to try and go up into
this is my climbing costume.
You gotta look nice. You gotta look nice for the for the summit picture.
Absolutely. All right. Next slide. We're jumping ahead a bit in time. This is like a brief history. So 1953, We had the first summit, which is
at the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II. Last time the British Empire did a fucking thing.
Yeah, it was a sort of a signal moment for British excellence in that a New Zealander and a Nepalese man climbed a mountain in Nepal and Tibet. Yeah, so there was this real like culture shift as well in terms of mountaineering, where there was this move away from this kind of like alpinism that we've seen, the kind of like assault style thing, to this much longer, much more siege based thing of like, you build a bunch of camps up the mountain, you take a lot of people and a lot of shit, um, and you have like multiple pairs of like climbing partners. And maybe one of the best mountaineers of his day, Eric Shipton, was like the guy who got sidelined off the command of this expedition because he was like, it's getting too big, it's like unworkable, it's barely even mountaineering anymore. um and instead they got some other guys in, and they ran it like a military operation, which it kind of was. And yeah, mountain successfully conquered with the use of down jackets and supplementary oxygen.
Yeah, as you can clearly see, like it's
This is Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay. Tenzing Norgay, the Nepalese Sherpa, treated not well after this. Not as well as he should have been, certainly. He got the George Medal out of it, and Hillary got a knighthood, which sort of that distinction kind of tells you everything you need to know, really. It was briefly a feature of like Nepalese nationalism that Norgay got onto the summit first. I don't think that's true, but I also don't think it matters.
Yeah,
no, it doesn't matter at all for this, unless you go solo, which we'll get to. But it doesn't matter if you're first or second. Like the last step, who gives a shit? Like you've done the impossible.
Yeah. It's something that Hillary never claimed either. It's Hillary, like quite a nice man, very self-effacing.
Yeah.
He's not still alive now, I don't think, but he lived for like.
No, he passed away. He passed away.
But still, like very, very active in commenting on like mountaineering, and ever since was like, it was a team effort. But yeah, so successfully conquered, highest mountain in the world, stood on top of. Great, fantastic. Next slide, please.
Yeah. So then we get to these guys. These are cool, they are fucking cool as all get out. They are Peter Habeler, Austrian, and Reinhold Messner, German. Very German. Both very Austrian and very German.
The second most insane German man of the 70s after Werner Herzog.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%.
What were they cooking in Germany in the 70s?
Bullets, mostly.
Bratwursts.
Yeah. But they were the first pair to do the summit of Mount Everest without supplemental oxygen. So they just did it under their own steam in 1978. This was a thing that genuinely at the time everybody says you can't do it. Like it's impossible. It's like the 2-hour marathon. Like you will, by going up that high, because it's not good for you, we'll get there, without oxygen, like you will die. They had doctors say to them literally like, you might do it, but even if you come home, you won't recognize your wife and children. It was sort of considered undoable, but they did it, with vast amounts of training and insane amounts of natural skills. But they proved to the world that it could be done, and not only that it could be done, that you didn't need to do it in like the sort of siege mentality style. They did it in much smaller groups, much smaller packs. On the bottom left, you see that's Habeler being photographed from below by Messner. Messner, by the way, who almost went snowblind because he had to occasionally take his goggles and gloves off to take these pictures to prove that they had actually done it, because they knew that if they didn't come home with pictures, nobody would fucking believe them.
Sure.
And this just as a side note, but just as a demonstration of how insane these guys are. On their way down from doing the summit without extra oxygen, so about like 300 meters, so when you get below the rock band, Habeler had glissaded, which is literally like sitting in the snow on your butt and just pointing yourself downwards and going, wee! And he went from the summit down to Camp 4 in an hour, and that's like a descent of, I want to say 3,000 feet or something, in an hour on the highest mountain in the world. And if you tip left or right, nobody will ever fucking find you again.
Yeah.
Which is I can't believe you begin to describe how insane that is, but it's also incredibly boss. Yeah.
World slide champion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Undefeated.
Yeah, they would also do later on the very famous Eiger North Face in 10 hours without knowing the route. They would just get up there because they were trying to rescue some stranded Polish climbers. And this was made world famous because at the time Clint Eastwood was down there filming the Eiger Sanction, the movie, which is actually filmed on the Eiger. It's quite cool, even though it's a rubbish ass movie. And Haberle would again summit the Eiger North Face in a day at the age of 74. So, if you want to aspire to be someone, being Peter Haberle is one option. You could also be Reinhold Messner, but then you have to be much, much more stranger and insane.
Yeah. Messner had this kind of like Eminence Grise thing in his later years where he was like, listen, it's not mountaineering unless you lose 3 fingers doing it. The snow changed me as a person. It was like almost a mystical kind of alpinism. It was very, I mean, it was incredible, but like, because you knew he had done it. But yeah, not a man with a lot of kind words to say about like the sort of present state of mountaineering as an activity.
No, I mean, this is part of it's a I don't know, different conversation, I guess, but like part of the discussion is like now that because we've done pretty much every peak in like the most accessible way, the whole conversation now, if you're a serious mountaineer, is like, do you do it in the right style? So do you do it fast and light and not with these siege tactics? And, how much can you do in a day? And like how, can you do it in even more strange and spectacular ways? We'll have a picture in a later slide of something the Russians did on Everest in 2004, which is insane.
Yeah, the thing is, we need to colonize space urgently because the mountaineers are driving themselves insane.
I was about to say,
Yes.
we need
All right, to Olympus Mons, let's go.
we need to make new mountains.
Yeah, pretty much, because
Yeah.
like, fuck hillizing Berlin, mountainize Berlin, so that we can give the Germans something to do, because they're going nuts not having new mountains to climb.
Yeah. Next slide, I think.
This fucking guy.
Yeah, so this fucking guy now. So this is the guy on the left is Dick Bass. He is an immensely wealthy terrible fucking name, terrible fucking guy. Comes from a family of oil tycoons. And later, you can see it just on his little collar of his lined white sweater.
Cool
Opens a ski.
yeah.
It was cool. Yeah, his cool turtleneck. He wore it before Steve Jobs in reverse. But and later opened a ski resort. So that's the kind of guy he is. And he found another guy at some fucking rich people resort called Frank Wells, who would one day become the president of the Disney Corporation. So another, good guy, basically. And Bass had done like some of the famous climbs in North America, like Mount McKinley, but said, I want to do more and I want to do it better. So what they did is, because they had far, far, far too much fucking money, they went out and hired some of the very best climbers in the world at the time, David Brashears, Rick Ridgway, some of the others. And they said to them, we will give you like a shed load of money and also your own chance to do these mountains. If you guide us up the highest summit on every continent. This is called the 7 summits. Now it's a fairly it's a tick list to end all tick lists, basically. Certainly for still modern mountaineers, but also now for rich dickheads.
Never let rich dickheads in your hobby, whatever it is.
No. So Dick Bass becomes the first person in the world, so including the entire fraternity of like serious mountaineers to do this. Although Reinhold Messner, of course, would say that his list is dumb and gay because he thinks that.
Yeah, you can still see out of both eyes. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah. It mainly centers around the question of which one is the highest peak in Oceania. Bass would say Kosciuszko, which is like a big hill in Australia. Yeah. And the other one is Carsten's Pyramid on New Guinea, which is much higher and also much more terrifying to get to because it's 5,000 meters high and it's in the middle of a jungle. So it's, not such an easy achievement. But basically...
I was about to say, it is very funny that one of these is just like, a fairly large mountain in the Appalachians, about that size. It's like, wow, I climbed up to the Mill Mountain Star in Roanoke.
Yeah. Like the thing about, people who do the tallest one in every state, and you get Florida's, it's just like a literal hill.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, they published this book. You can see it on the right. It's called Seven Summits because 7 summits. And they basically kick off. Then it becomes a new rage because these guys who are supremely wealthy and in their defense, certainly Bass was a very fit man who did these things, not under his own steam, but he certainly was by the end, he was quite a reasonably capable mountaineer. He needed the professionals to drag him up it, but he was not incapable. But he kickstarted this off as like no longer content with ruling the world with golf courses and things of that nature.
A golf course on Everest. It's genius.
Oh yeah.
Death Zone Golf. Yeah, I think it has a ring to it. I think we can get away with it.
We've golfed on the moon. Why not?
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to getting our proposal to an insurance company and us going look, we have this idea for a business and can you insure us on this one?
Step 1, sponsor dirt racing team. Step 2, sponsor Everest expedition to golf up there.
Listen, you've heard of mini golf, but this is going to be mega golf.
I mean, listen, if you don't fall off, and bear in mind the summit of Everest is about the size of a dining table. If you don't fall off, driving like a golf ball off the summit of Everest has got to feel fantastic.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I could see it, or the little windmill of the mini golf park going the windmill going 110 miles an hour because of the gusting wind. Try getting your ball through that. It's just. But yeah, basically, so with this, roughly speaking, you get the advent of rich dickhead tourism, because going to Nepal is very, very expensive for all the reasons, and going up a mountain the size of Everest is even more expensive. So you have to have a lot of money if you are an amateur and you want to get on with this. So what that leads to, next slide please, is this. This is a picture from 2012 at the time, but this is a pretty good summary of the modern Everest industry, because it is 100% an industry now. It depends on which records you believe, but about 7,000 odd people have now done the summit of Everest. If you're curious, the record holder is Kami Rita Sherpa, who's done it 28 times because he's a guide. And the female record holder is Lakpa Sherpa, who has done it 10 times also because she's a mountain guide. But the vast majority of people who have done this, so many of the thousands, are basically very rich tourists with wildly varying skill levels, which occasionally get people killed, but we will get there.
Yeah, we'll get to that, yes.
Yeah. Why are they all in this one line? We will also get to that, but this is like a good day on Everest. That's what it looks like now. All these people trying to do this. This picture was taken in 2012 by Simone Moro, who is a very gifted Italian mountaineer, and he was at the time trying to do this without oxygen. Basically, what he says, it's just an amusement park now. It's the highest mountain in the world. The line that you see before you is 200 climbers slowly ascending up to the South Col. And basically he said, this is insane. This is incredibly dangerous. I'm getting the fuck out of here.
Smart.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, as sort of a brief symbol of the modern Everest tourism experience. In 2014, there was a Chinese woman named Jin Wang who managed to take a helicopter to 21,000 feet and then started her climb from there. So skipping vast majorities of the base camp to higher up, and as to whether or not that's still mountaineering is a different conversation, but it's certainly indicative of what has happened to this mountain and this climb.
Yeah, I mean, helicopters are only getting better. They've landed one on the summit now. I mean, landed in heavy air quotes. The FAI definition of landed, which is the rotors are still turning, but it's on the ground for 2 minutes.
Yeah, they touch the skin basically. Yeah.
So we're looking at a nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded type situation.
Almost exactly. Yeah, parking in New York, Everest, things of this nature.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons that people who are committed mountaineers don't do this route anymore. They either do something far more terrifying, or they do it without supplemental oxygen, or they do it in winter, which is another just incredibly scary thing to do. But they don't do this anymore because it's this now.
Yeah, and as sort of further evidence of the circus, if we go to the next slide, so this is Everest Base Camp. And this is a luxury activity for rich dickheads now. You see these glamping motherfuckers in their giant space domes.
Surprised they don't just build permanent structures at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we'll sort of get to why that is, but yeah, Everest Base Camp is not like permanently occupied, and it now can't be. But it's still too high, is the short answer. This is you're still like acclimatizing on the way up just by being here.
Yeah, this is Everest Base Camp is at 5,200 or something, so that's 16,000, 17,000 feet up in the sky. So most people can't stay there anyway. Like it's even at this altitude, people start being quite extravagantly sick.
Yeah, it's a very.
I like the phrase extravagantly sick.
I haven't been, and I don't really want to, but from what I understand, Everest Base Camp is a very, very weird atmosphere. Just by virtue of the people and the situation, and just all of this luxury stuff. The Sherpas had to carry this up, install it, and then they're gonna have to like break it back down and carry it down again. Like none of this stuff is staying here over winter. And it just feels so gross is the main thing.
It's wrong. It's like you're looking at something that like nature and common sense dictates should not remotely be there, and yeah, it is because rich dickhead tourism. It's I get just kind of not good just from looking at it.
Yeah. So now that we've told you why it's gross, we go to the next slide. We enter our next section, which is how you actually do it, what it's like.
Walk a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit of walking, a little bit of being carried.
Yeah. Before you can put your boots on and put your crampons on and start, your trek to the roof of the world. Next slide, please. You have to pay a certain amount of money.
What the fuck?
It's a chunk of change right there. Yeah,
this is a car. This is a house in some places.
There was one guy who tried to do it on the cheap and got away with paying $7,000, but he did freeze to death in front of like a lot of people. So you gotta pay.
But it sounds like you didn't get away with it.
Yeah. This is not really a thing where you can get like a deal on sort of like self-guiding.
Yeah. Take the self-guided tour
of Everest.
Yeah, so this is just a screenshot from a website that sort of collates all the different companies that are available. Gino, stop touching the microphone.
Hi, Gino.
Gino.
Yeah, the dog is near the microphone. No, wait, come on. So what you see here, this is just a snapshot. It only goes, as you see, from E to I. So this is not all the companies that are doing it. There's like a whole bunch more that are off screen. And the cost, as you can see, is anywhere between 35K and 200,000 for the Furtenbach signature adventure trek up Everest.
What the hell is that?
Oh, they probably like put you on one of the domes,
Yeah,
you get like a flat screen. You
get taken up in a pressurized sedan chair.
Well, there is a pressurized way, but that's not where you want to end up.
Like evacuation bag. Yeah. But I mean, the other thing is that because base camp
doesn't.
We'll get there. But so
okay,
the other thing is because base camp isn't assessable, it doesn't have rules. Like you can pitch a bunch of tents wherever you can clear it. So a lot of these companies will like have their own sort of separate adjunct camp. And you can be like, oh, this is, the Himex camp or whatever, the ultra prestige level where you've got to have like a fucking lanyard or something to get in. And we made a guy carry an espresso machine up here or whatever.
So like these are just the prices for like the expedition itself. Then there's like a whole bunch of stuff on top. Roughly speaking, it costs most people, including airfare and stuff, about $10,000 to get there and back. You pay another $11,000 this season for the mountaineering permit. You pay a $4,000 non-refundable trash deposit because all the shit that you use needs to get taken out, although it frequently doesn't, and it's really gross. We'll talk about it later. You have to hire like local people at another 5.5K, roughly speaking, and then you have to pay for your own supplies, and that it is about 30K per person. That includes like your gear and stuff, and it also in like 99% of people includes your need for supplementary oxygen bottles, which cost about $500 a person because the Sherpas have to carry them up the extremely dangerous route. And you'd need at least 5 of those per person to make any serious bid for the summit. We'll talk about them in a little bit.
Saving some money by cutting out the oxygen and just dying instantly.
Yeah,
I got 2 oxygen tanks right here. I slap my chest and immediately fall.
Start wheezing,
Yeah, if you're wondering, by the way, I think I have this right. If you're looking at the bottom 2, it says International Mountain Guides, brackets hybrids, and then bracket Sherpa. I think bracket hybrid means also white guide. I'm fairly sure that's what that means.
That's in case you're racist. That's for the racists.
Yeah, fully.
That's for South Africans.
Yeah, I mean, I could be wrong about that, and but this comes out in America, so freedom of speech. Fuck you.
Almost certainly, and like it's a good income for like professional mountaineers to help haul people up mountains like this.
It certainly is. So you've paid a bunch of money. You've hired. You're getting domed off in the tent. But
I have a bunch of thoughts about the economics of getting domed off in the tent that I'll get to later on when we get to like 2014.
Yeah. Next slide, please.
I mean, sex work is it is a real thing. Maybe not a base camp necessarily, but like it can get grim. Right. Yeah. The actual mountaineering.
Yeah, so this shows the main path. This is the path that Hillary and Tenzing Sherpa took. It is the main trade route. This is where everybody goes because, as Alice already mentioned, the other main route is through Tibet, which China closes a lot and has a bit more problems with you parking your big-ass dome, whereas Nepal doesn't have that.
Some sort of like fragment of communism survives in the CPC's institutional memory where it's like no flat screen dome.
There are, I should also mention, because like this is a bit important because like serious mountaineering still gets done on this route as well. So there are 14 other lines to get up this mountain, which includes the picture on the right. That is the 2004 Russian Diretissima North Face route. Diretissima meaning the most direct line possible.
Just the most Russian thing to be like, I climb mountain. You just go straight up.
Yeah. Real assault mentality, yes.
I mean, that picture only shows like the final end of the top of the route, but obviously that's a little bit different than going for a walk. That was an astonishing feat of mountaineering, and obviously no guide in their right mind is going to take you up that because you would both die.
It's like imagining, the fucking dentist who paid $100K to get to the summit of Everest. He's like on the top taking photos for the gram, and then like 2 Russian guys haul themselves over the side that's vertical.
Yeah,
tracksuits. Yes,
like,
we have to climb straight because Boris saw bear.
Just you literally got the guy's like, oh, did you pack your oxygen? And you just pull out bottle after bottle after bottle of vodka,
and two Kalashnikovs.
Never know when you see snow bear.
Celebratory gunfire on the roof of the world,
basically, so why, apart from China not letting you get domed off, do people take this route? It's because it's the easiest. It's also why Hillary and Tenzing did it in this particular manner.
Yeah, I do find it funny that they chose to name the climbing brand the North Face, the ubiquitous one, when, as you see, the North Face is the one that the Russians are like climbing up vertically like Spider-Man. It's like sort of turning point Everest, Interesting, you wear the North Face and yet you climb the southeastern face.
Yeah. Technically speaking, the North Face, like now most of their stuff is for like more for people who want to look like a mountaineer and just like, I don't know, go to the big Tesco. But so they.
I just think the jackets are warm.
Are
you catching strays over here?
Yeah. But like, if you want to be a cool dude, they make the Summit series these days, which is their like, oh, you actually mean it stuff. Anyway, different conversation, and I support other brands as well.
Big Arc'teryx guy,
Now I live in Switzerland, so Mama.
Of course.
Yeah. No, essentially, the big way to do this is certainly up to Camp 3 is you need to acclimatize. That means you need to go to base camp, stay there for a really long time because like your body and especially your lungs need to get used to the air being thin and there being, more CO2 and it, not essentially being very good for you. So your lungs need to train. So what you do is you stay for a long time in base camp, then you make your way to Camp 2, you stay there for a bit, you go down, you go back up, you go to Camp 3, you go back down, and then you do that for a couple of weeks, and then you hope you get a good weather window, and then you make the summit push to Camp 4 and then the summit.
That
you
weather
can see
window
those
is going to be really important later.
Yeah, because the weather windows are often very small because, as you will imagine, the tallest mountain on Earth catches some wind and other weather. Yeah. And also, as I said before, even at base camp, because it's over 5,000 meters in altitude, you can already get acute mountain sickness in various and delightful forms from the altitude, and you might even need to get helicoptered out at base camp, so right before you start going to the...
it's some sort of bag,
before you actually start climbing.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you need to get helicoptered out in like the worst situations, dead or alive, they will just sling you under a helicopter, You can just deal with that,
You will also need some other bits. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is sort of similar to what we've seen before. Basically, if you are paying, you are not going up there like a big hero. Because you are presumably far too incapable to install your own ropes and manage your own self. So what you do is you clip onto a fixed line. That's what you see before you. That's why literally these people are walking in a line, and that's because the Sherpa guides have gone in front of you ahead of the big summit weather windows, and they have built a path for you. They maintain the path, they build camps, all that stuff. So basically, what they do is they fix long lines of rope to the mountain, and what you do is you clip into the rope, and then you put one foot in front of the other, and then you get to a transition point, you clip into another rope, and then you continue until you reach the summit, or as the case may be, not. So you may, from looking at this picture, the one before, have sort of off your own free will come across some of the problems that arise when there's a big queue and everybody's on the same rope and you can't detach yourself from the rope.
Mountaineering is sort of like free-spirited, individualistic activity. Get on the fucking rope.
Yeah. Everybody in line.
Get on the rope. Shut up.
I'm pretty sure there's enough demand here that they could put in a cog railway. I'm just saying.
Well, that's an entrepreneuring spirit.
Yeah.
The only problem is you will have to rebuild the cog railway constantly.
Every year, buddy.
Yes.
You just avoid the glacier,
Okay.
The Diratisima cog railway. That's an elevator.
Yeah.
No, it's sideways. It's a railway.
You could do like the Jungfraujoch and have most of it in a tunnel.
Yeah, I mean, the Eiger has a tunnel too. I mean, there was so China did say in 2015 that they were going to build a rail tunnel under Everest, but they also said they were going to do that by 2020. So
they're getting around to it.
Yeah.
I like the idea of a bunch of people standing on the other side, looking at their watch and just kind of stamping their feet and going, "When's this fucking train coming?"
It'd be funny if they had they have an emergency exit from the tunnel at the peak of Everest.
I mean, there are some trains in Xinjiang and Tibet that you have to get a doctor's note to ride because the air is so thin that even just being a passenger is dangerous.
Oh yeah, it's they go way up there. The cars are pressurized and everything. So that then when you get off at Lhasa, then you get the altitude sickness instantly.
The altitude sickness that kills you instantly. Well, we'll talk about that on fucking slide 35.
Something, brother. Yeah.
Had to get special diesel locomotives for the atmosphere, which were made in Erie, Pennsylvania.
Wow.
Nice. Shout out. But, as you can see, again, none of this is possible without the Sherpas because they are the people who make the ropes that allow you to haul your fat ass up there. Next slide, please.
Motivate you to haul your fat ass up there if you don't want to haul your fat ass up there anymore.
Also that, yes. This is the other thing you need. Basically, you need supplemental oxygen because nobody's body is designed to be at these altitude for really any serious length of time or at all. These are also carried up and placed there by Sherpa support teams who therefore have to make several very dangerous crossings through the Khumbu icefalls. We'll get there. But yeah, that's what this looks like. This is Camp 2, I think, or camp. Yeah, I think it's camp 2. And like basically you have to do it this way. These are picks from one of the guiding companies. I can't remember which one. Also, I don't care because it's not promo. They charge about $10,000 for you to enjoy the privilege of breathing while going up Everest. You can also not have that optional extra.
Nice.
So as a brief side note before we move on, during the pandemic, obviously the Nepalese healthcare system is not the best in the world. During the COVID pandemic, the Nepalese government was actually begging climbers and expeditions to bring their empty oxygen tanks back down to Kathmandu because the country had run out of supplemental oxygen and they really needed to treat some patients. If you wanted to have like a nice sort of glimpse of the disparities between how different people live in this world.
Not as important as getting your orthodontist up a mountain.
No.
Tourism's a great thing to base an economy on.
The healthiest, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing you don't necessarily need on the mountain, but that you definitely leave on the mountain is, next slide, please.
Oh my God.
Look at these beautiful views. Wasn't this worth going halfway around the world and paying $100,000 for? So there's a real spectrum here. Like, whether it's like you throw a drink bottle over the side or whether it's you leave your mummifying corpse on the mountain.
Where you deserve to be. Let's be very clear about that.
Yeah, anything that goes up has to come back down or it just stays there. And because Everest is one of the driest places in the world, it like preserves stuff very, very well, even, stuff that isn't plastic. Also, the piss and the shit, because people do be shitting. You do got to shit somewhere, and the traditional mountaineering thing to do for this is you just kind of like dig a hole and shit wherever. You might not bother with the hole. And someone has worked out that each season you leave about 12,000 kilograms, about 26,500 pounds of shit on Everest, like literal shit. It's like not at all uncommon when you're like pitching tents at camps to be dodging other people's shit,
frozen
balls, or just frozen turds.
At that point, you're probably adding more weight to the mountain in shit than plate tectonics are adding to the mountain in rock every year.
Yeah, well, I mean, tectonically, it might be shrinking. We're actually not sure. But yeah,
I think Everest is still growing.
But like even stuff like used oxygen canisters like increasingly get recycled, but still a lot of them just get dumped.
If we keep this up for a couple million years, that's going to be a geological feature.
Oh yeah, these the small yellow ones are like camping stove fuel for cooking. A lot of drinks containers and stuff. So yeah, and this is a view for a lot of it.
Yeah, except higher up when there's slightly more corpses in your view, but
Rainbow
we'll
Valley.
Yeah. So at this point, you have your line, you have your oxygen, you've had shit. Let's start going up the mountain. Next slide, please. This is the Khumbu Icefall. This is a picture from 2015. It changes every year because, as you can see, this is where a very, very big glacier tips over into terrain of a slightly higher angle, and therefore is not a solid glacier anymore, but a very broken up, rubbly field with giant blocks of ice called seracs. And every year, before the commercial season starts, specialized teams of climbers, Nepalese Sherpas, go up and create a new route through this death trap, because all of this is very slowly but very surely shifting downward. Because it's a glacier, it moves, so it's unstable, and a lot of these blocks can and occasionally do tip over, and people underneath it don't tend to survive that kind of thing. Like I said at the very beginning, tell me that putting a route through here with like ropes and aluminium ladders isn't fucking engineering. Look me dead in the eye and tell me that that's not some serious fucking engineering work.
Justin just like, well, yeah, okay, but you could do it with a cog railway.
You could maybe sort of dig into the rock on the side here and build a staircase, I'm thinking. Have some kind of like concrete over. You would need another snow shed is the thing, but
Robert Moses looking at Everest.
I can fix her.
So this is in some ways the like most dangerous, but on the numbers, it's more dangerous because more people go through it. You have to go through it multiple times. You try and time it so that you do it when the ice is most stable. It's least stable in the day because the sun's melting it. But yeah, this is the kind of thing that needs a lot of like staging through and building those routes and maintaining those routes and moving all of your oxygen canisters and camping fuel stoves and like packs and stuff is very, very dangerous work, which is why it gets done by Sherpas. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, you as an orthodontist, you only do this like 5 times or something. If you're the Sherpa supporting the orthodontist, you will do this many, many more fucking times. Although the guys who put up these routes are called the ice doctors, which I think is just a very cool job name. And I don't want their jobs because I like living, but I do think it's a cool. It's a cool job name. So now you come through base camp, and at the top of the icefall, where this sort of all stabilizes again, is Camp 1, and from Camp 1 you go to Camp 2, and that is through the Lhotse ice face. Next slide, please.
Big wall.
Big wall.
Big icy, big glaciated wall. Again, here you can see the fixed lines that everybody is on all the time. Basically, what you do is you clip on with a thing called a Jumar. You have 2 of them. Basically, it's slide Jumar up the rope, kick the crampon, slide the Jumar up the rope, kick the crampon, and so on and so forth until you get to Camp 3 and ultimately the summit. This is, as you can imagine, certainly at the altitude, very, very hard and very, very not that difficult, like technically, but it is very, very hard because you're exerting yourself at a very high altitude. And as you can see, most people will at this point be already wearing their like full down suits. And the sun does hit the Lhotse face in the afternoon. So you can do this, kick stepping at many thousands of feet in the air whilst also boiling because the sun is cooking your down suit.
Cool.
So
fun.
Right before you get to Camp 3, the slope angle goes to more like 40 or 50 degrees, which I think is what you see on the right. Which is just the last bit is but then you reach the delightful safety of Camp 3. Next slide, please.
You can have another shit hit. You can throw an oxygen canister down the face and like kill a bunch of people.
Oh, that'd be funny.
Yeah, whatever you want. You can play
golf.
I definitely want to roll something down this slope here. You couldn't stop me from rolling something down.
No, I'd be one of those cheese rolling competitions ASAP.
Yeah, I need like a big boulder or something,
Have you just invented the sport of orthodontist bowling? Is that what?
Yes.
I gotta shove the Indiana Jones rock down the slope.
You're like at the bottom of the climb. You're like hooked in. You see the Indiana Jones rock at the top. And you're like, oh boy.
All right. Fucking weave, Ross. Fucking weave.
This is one for the offensive bowling animations, YouTube guys.
I hate it when I get a 7-10 orthodontist split. That's so fucking hard to clean up.
Get in there, Dr. Powers. Get in there, you son of a bitch.
Gonna have to Fred Flintstone this one.
Well, it's a living, I say, as I bowl an orthodontist to his death.
Anyway, I don't want to spend too long here, but basically all I wanted to do was point out, you see how all those tents are sort of horizontal on this incredibly sloped piece of glacier? That's because the Sherpas go up every year and like hack out horizontal platforms for you to put your tent up. Well, for them to also put your tent up so you can collapse and heap inside it. Just, again, 99% of people would not be doing it without the incredible logistics and support of vastly underpaid people who take incredible risks to get your fat ass up there. Next slide, please.
Because it's still hard enough physically that it makes you feel like you're doing something really difficult, which you are, but it's been
go windsurfing, you fucking pussy.
Yeah.
Not me. I will be at the tiki bar.
This is one of the problems of climbing Everest, is that you're hooked onto the thing climbing up, and there is going to be like a mountaineer or like some extreme sports guy who is like on some shit on the way down in an unconventional manner. You're climbing
the chocolate
up
that killed the Wehrmacht. Yeah.
And a guy is like fucking windsurfing down, and you're like, okay.
All right, guy.
So there was I want to say it's a Slovakian guy whose name escapes me, who skied from the summit of Everest all the way down to base
What
camp.
the fuck?
Yeah, there were
Which
a
is
couple of guys
pretty
who
boss.
came down on like wingsuits.
Yeah, that's sick.
Anyway, this is on a good day. Again, foreshadowing what happens when there's a good weather window. This is everybody moving up to Camp 4 for a summit push. And somewhere between camps 3 and 4, you encounter this thing. It's called the Yellow Band. As you can see, it's limestone. You just need to do a quick bit of traversal at about 26,000 feet.
Nope.
And the rock
It's like
is
basic
extremely
climbing gym stuff, but at massive altitude.
Right, and if you slip, you are sucking some dong.
Well,
it's like
you're on
if you
shut up.
I don't know, if you went out for like a small local hike and you just saw this, like you were like, oh, I'm just going to get up that, you wouldn't think twice about doing this, because like as you can see, it's not like a technical thing to do. It's just trying to do this at like a rock angle between 20 and 30 degrees at this altitude, while wearing crampons, while exhausted, while carrying oxygen, is not that easy. Also, it takes about 2 hours to traverse this band. And if you slip, it takes you a long time to get up, and everybody else behind you has to wait because there's, only the one fixed line. So do try not to do that.
See, I'm seeing this kind of pedestrian load with this amount of vertical circulation, and public transit brain in me is saying, put a fucking escalator in.
I'll tell them, man.
I'm really enjoying the Rosniak program for how we ease these public transport
We need to.
woes.
Okay, if we make it boring, no one will do it anymore, and we won't have these problems.
We
That's
just get
my
a
plan.
bus.
Yeah, have a little. Yeah, a little
bus that goes up
Yes.
9 million switchbacks.
Yeah.
Maybe we do run an escalator, but like at a slightly faster speed, so people think it's frightening that way.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. It's like those high-speed moving walkways they have on the Paris Metro, except I'm not sure how you do the speed transition on an escalator. That's very confusing. Someone will figure it out.
So you make your way from Camp 3 to Camp 4. Next slide, please.
Almost made it.
You're very close, and that is also sometimes the problem. You only have about 3,000 vertical feet to go at this point. The problem is, because you can now see the summit, you can see the summit pyramid in the back there, you do tend to go a little loopy, because you are now so close, you can see the goal, and you've paid so much money, and it's so close, and God, you just want to get up there. Who cares what the weather's doing? It's fine. You'll be fine. Don't worry about that. And also, you are now officially in what is delightfully known as the death zone, and your body really just doesn't want to be there. It really doesn't want to be there.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? If there's a place called the fucking death zone, don't go there.
Yeah, I would avoid.
You have 3,000 feet to go. What the
It's
fuck?
only going to get worse.
So let's talk a little bit about the death zone. Next slide, please.
Deathzone.jpg.
Yeah. AKA God just doesn't want you to be there. He says you're getting too close and it's time for you to turn the fuck around. You are now between the south core of Everest at 26,000 feet and the summit at 29,035 feet. I think this is from an interview with Simona Moro again. I'll just read a little bit. Climbing at this altitude is a cocktail of euphoria and deep suffering. Stars pop in your peripheral vision. The moisture drains out of your body and your voice becomes thin, tainted by something you can't put your finger on. A fit climber with a resting heart rate of 45 per minute can crumple on an easy snow slope. You think you're in control until you have to do something very simple, say assemble a small stove that you've put together 1,000 times before. You can't do that anymore. Mountaineering at extreme altitudes has nothing to do with normal mountaineering. Up there, every single step is torture. Every moment becomes savagely difficult. Actually, this is an interview with Habler, one of the guy who did it without oxygen, with
the
Messel.
insane, Austrian mystics. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Over half of all deaths on Everest occur here. The others mainly in the icefall below. That's because literally, your body is not designed to be at these altitudes. It physiologically doesn't want to be there. For example, the lack of oxygen in your blood slows down wounds closing. So if you get a little bit loopy and clumsy because you're at this altitude, and you cut yourself on your crampons or your ice axe, they don't close so well no more. You also tend to not eat or drink very well because you're so fatigued, like you can't make yourself do it. So you do tend to be like constantly pushing yourself forward on empty. And also because you haven't really been sleeping, because try sleeping with an oxygen mask on or off at 26,000 feet.
I sleep with a CPAP, but I'm fucking fine. But I guess I'm just built different.
You'd be fine.
Well,
yeah.
See you on the mountain next season. That's all I gotta say.
All right, WTYP ascends Everest.
I have a question, which is you have all these effects of hypoxia, but you have an oxygen mask. Is the oxygen just not sufficient, or how does that work?
Well, the problem is like if you can turn like the dial up and just have like full blast oxygen and get a nice night's sleep, but then you probably won't have enough oxygen in that same bottle to make the summit the next day. So you're constantly trading off. Like basically you're sort of living at a minimum viable level so that when it comes to the summit push, you have just enough liters of compressed oxygen to just make it back up and back down. But like
take yourself
it's very much on the edge.
The limiting factor is like weight of oxygen canister.
Yeah,
what they could do is put a big pressurized dome over the summit. Run an oxygen line up there, or not even that. It would just be a large ventilation system at that point. I'm just saying, there's engineering solutions to all these problems.
I'm thinking of like the Palm Jumeirah at the moment, and just like making a tiny Everest on Everest and putting a bunch of luxury condos on them. Yeah, another thing that you have apart from the hypoxia, which is affecting your higher cognitive functions, such as decision making, which you probably don't need up there. Get rid of that. Is the other thing is because of the lack of oxygen, you have these huge like hormone surges of epinephrine epinephrine and dopamine. So like while your actual body is decaying, you have these periods where you feel incredibly exuberant and capable of doing anything. At a time where that might not necessarily be true.
Great.
But,
at the moment
feel
when
great.
You could push for the summit at a time when it's unsafe.
Yeah.
Well, it's never safe, but
Yeah. And also, like, apart from, that's all the quote unquote regular stuff, that the main thing is that everybody does tend to forget is you need to go back down the mountain because people tend to burn themselves up to get to the summit. And, on your way down, maybe you just take a step left instead of right and you just pop off like 8,000 feet. Or maybe you sit down because actually you're quite tired and you just fall asleep and never wake up. And then you become a popsicle on,
You become a landmark.
Unless some Sherpas want to go up and carry your ass down, you just stay there. You become a landmark because, like we say, it's very dry. You just get mummified,
Yes.
Yeah.
And like it's very dangerous doing that. There was a woman called Hannelore Schmatz who died in a sort of like very obvious position. Again, just of exhaustion, just like collapsed. And people felt bad. This like Nepalese police inspector and a Sherpa went up to bring her down. Both of those guys died. Just like fell off the mountain. So
yeah.
It's for a long time, many years, there was this corpse, Green Boots, because the dude just went headfirst into a snowdrift, only thing sticking out these bright green mountaineering boots. And I think his body lasted up there until it like actually got swept off the mountain. Like
I thought they brought him down eventually.
It's very hard. Like there was earlier this year, there was a bit of controversy around forgotten her name, the Norwegian woman who was the first to do like the 8,000ers without oxygen, and like she did it, but the last one she did was K2, and there was controversy as to whether or not they had walked past like a dying climber basically and not helped. And it's like, I can't remember what happened there, whether or not that was true or not. But like the basic thing is you're already so pushing yourself to the limits of human functioning that the thought of like carrying another like 200 pounds of human in a down suit is pretty much, you're not doing that. If you sit down there, you fall there unless like a handful of extraordinary human beings come by, like
strong
the
men,
Sherpas.
Right.
Yeah. You're dead and you're staying there, and like, not helping is not just like not easy. It's very liable to get you killed as well. That's why it's generally speaking
not possible.
Yeah. Anyway, you're very close to the summit now, and all you have to do is, next slide, please. you have to get over this thing. This is called the Hillary Step. It was very, very famous. This is on the left-hand side. You see what it looked like before the 2015 earthquakes, and on the right side, what it looks like today. So this was at about 8,790 meters up. It is a series of 12 individual moves on this big block you see on the left-hand side. And very obviously, this is a big bottleneck because, you can't have 5 guys going up there at the same time. It's one person at a time, and I think you can only descend. Like, if one person is descending, nobody's going up at the same time. The climbing is not very hard. Again, if you saw this in a park and you felt reasonably confident in like base level climbing, you would just do this.
Yeah, I could probably do this on a good day.
Yeah,
if it weren't that far up.
Yeah, it has a fixed rope. I ain't worried about shit. Now, if you'll join me on my there's your problem embezzles $300,000 to go climb Everest.
You're getting the prestige package.
Yeah,
the racist package.
A quick side note, if you do this without the fixed line, if you fall off on the left-hand side, you fall 8,000 feet straight down the left side of the mountain. And if you fall off on the right side, you fall 10,000 feet down the mountain on the other side. So don't do that.
Don't do that.
This is, I mentioned Rainbow Valley earlier. This is a little geographical feature you can see from the summit of Everest. And this is all the people who did one of those two things, and it's called Rainbow Valley because it's a lot of dead bodies in very brightly colored climbing gear that are just sitting in, having eaten shit on some jagged rocks.
On the other hand, your situational awareness rapidly improves as you get all that more oxygen in you, as you drop that far.
You're the healthiest you've ever been in like hours, days.
Yeah. Don't worry, nothing bad is gonna happen to your corpse. I'm taking your shit. I'm taking
the joke about the
I'm taking your
down the lift shaft.
I'm taking down your corpse's boots. I'm taking them. I'm taking that jacket too. I'll have that.
Well, they are very expensive jackets, so probably a resale market for them.
I'm making my money back. Exactly.
A lot of expensive climbing gear just left up there. Absolutely, going begging.
Yeah. Anyway, after that, yay! Congratulations. Next slide, please.
You did it.
You did it.
You did it.
Dickhead.
Congratulations.
You walked up the hill.
Congratulations, listener. You've summited Everest.
This is the whole size of the summit, by the way.
That's small.
It's snow and ice. I mean, it's a summit. And you can get some photos to stick in your like waiting room, because you are an orthodontist.
And maybe your secretary will finally look at you and bang you like you've always been wanting.
No, she won't. You deserve to be so unhappy.
So like
a fun story to tell at a wedding reception.
It's true.
Or at least you think it's fun. The people you're telling it to may not.
maximum time up here is like half an hour max, and then you want to get down sooner rather than later because this is a good way to just become exhausted and leave it too late, and you have to climb down in the dark when you can't see, and it's much colder, and you die.
Yeah, that's not foreshadowing, by the way. That's just a coincidence that we're talking about that.
If we go to the next slide, here, I have saved you all several $100,000. This is the view from the summit of Everest. Now you don't have to go. You're welcome.
This does count for your college credits, too.
You're going to have to go.
You can now say, somewhat evasively, I have seen the view from the top of Mount Everest.
You know what would be really
You're going to have to go climb Annapurna now. Sorry.
There are other Annapurnas in the lives of man. For instance, Annapurna.
If we get stupid rich, what we should do is open a college. That's objectively the funniest thing we can do.
If we get stupid rich, the funniest thing we could do is like do some really high altitude art installation. You know the like towns in Montana or whatever that have like a go sports team thing on the side of the mountain overlooking town. We do one of those on like Nutse, so that anyone who has to go up to the summit of Everest gets to see like, well, there's your problem written in stones or spray paint or something on like one of these
big
peaks.
welded girders like on the summit ridge of Nutse.
Yeah.
I'm funding the cog railway to the top of Everest. That's that's just what I'm doing. This is a safety hazard, this whole thing. If enough people want to go up there, we got to start fixing some shit,
So remember what we said about how we weren't doing any foreshadowing? Next slide, please.
Hi, it's Justin. So this is a commercial for the podcast that you're already listening to. People are annoyed by these, so let me get to the point. We have this thing called Patreon, right? The deal is you give us $2 a month, and we give you an extra episode once a month. Sometimes it's a little inconsistent, but it's $2. You get what you pay for. It also gets you our full back catalog of bonus episodes, so you can learn about exciting topics like guns, pickup trucks, or pickup trucks with guns on them. The money we raise through Patreon goes to making sure that the only ad you hear on this podcast is this one. Anyway, that's something to consider if you have $2 to spare each month. Join at patreon.com/WTYP pod. Do it if you want. Or don't. It's your decision, and we respect that. Back to the show.
It's a little presentation I put together within a presentation of the ways you're going to die.
Yeah.
What's not commonly known is this actually used to say ways the mountain will kill you land. Those letters fell over.
If we go to the next slide, please, I'll run us through the major hazards. We've kind of touched on most of these already, but so this is a Serac. This is the bottleneck at K2, so called because you're climbing up an ice slope towards.
It freaks me out just looking at it. It's just like that whole wall or bits of it is liable to like just pop off and crush you at any fucking time.
Oh yeah. So a Serac is like an ice overhang, big ice cube. And these move, and it's like an essential part of how glaciers like descend. And if one of these falls on you, you maybe get crushed by the entirety of it, which is like a block of ice the size of a house or a skyscraper.
Kill zone.
Yeah, you just you might get hit in the head by a rock and killed if it misses you. You might die in an avalanche that it starts if it misses you. These are really, really bad news and an absolutely like routine occurrence, and you're just like dodging these. It's also sometimes because it's like pure luck of the draw. You might be fine.
It might have a hole in it, and you have sort of a Buster Keaton situation, I
mean, there are absolutely people alive who've had like very, very near misses where like a block of ice the size of like a VW has gone past them and missed them by like inches. So that's a Serac.
If you didn't have that euphoria from just like the hypoxia, you will have it after that fucking thing misses you.
Yeah. Next slide, please. You got weather. Now, weather takes many forms. You could get lost in a storm and die. You could get too cold in a storm and die. You could shelter from a storm at the wrong time or in the wrong place and die. And because you're so far up, the wind speed is like, up to like 200 miles an hour. So you might just get blown off into a chasm and die. But also it changes better and better. So quickly. This is why we're talking about like weather windows. This is why that's important is if it is like, if there is a storm coming in and like if you're able to forecast that, do not climb the mountain. And this is true of any mountain. Like you can die in Scotland this way. People do every winter.
Every year people die like easily. Like
Scotland's easy mode. I'm Monroe bagging, and next thing you know, mountain rescues like hauling a frozen corpse off of Glencoe or whatever.
Yeah, Ben Nevis and Glencoe are like quite famous for just like slaughtering people who didn't see it coming.
Yeah, because it's kind of the thing. It's like it doesn't have the like cultural cachet that Everest does, and it's like you can get a train there, and so people are like, I can just walk up in trainers,
Yeah, it seems like just a nice, stroll up a hill, and then suddenly, boom,
and you're gasping for breath and dying.
Absolutely.
That's why I limit my hiking to the Mill Mountain Star in Roanoke,
which I'm about to put a goddamn railway on.
Yeah. Next slide, please. This is another Kumbu Icefall favorite. This is a crevasse. Crevasse is French for hole. Don't fall in the hole.
Don't do that.
Don't go at hole.
That's really bad.
These are generally like bridged with these like aluminium ladders, like you can see. You get a bunch of them like lashed together, as you can see. These can go really, really long. And for the most part, they stay stable unless they don't, and you just get pitched off the ladder and die. Or you're attached to a rope and you have to like haul yourself out. Sometimes,
which is possible, but like do it at 7,000 meters up while wearing a lot
Yeah.
of kit and not being
Sure.
able to breathe. It is like, it's not difficult rope work, but like at that altitude, you can't light a stove. So good luck. Or, you have to have the Sherpas haul you out and like build a rope system. Possible, but
They're
good
gonna,
luck.
Also,
They're gonna
fun
kick your kidneys out, and you deserve it.
Fun detail about crevasses. These can and do regularly get like snow bridges over them, where you get like a thin layer of like snow and ice that forms over the top that isn't enough to support a person's weight, but does make it invisible. And yeah, so sometimes you can just like disappear down a hole that is, hundreds of meters deep.
Yeah, and then you're
sounds
at the bottom
unpleasant.
of a glacier, and I think 2 years ago or something, because like the glaciers are retreating now, and occasionally they find not so much people, but like people that are now millimeters thin and scraped because they've been caught between two ice layers because of a crevasse. So they are very, very big pancakes now.
Do
like
not
that.
Preserved pancakes.
Isn't that
Have
like
horror of fault yourself.
Isn't that like the thing that like Annapurna likes to do? Is that it kills you and then it chews you up and then it spits you out like months later?
Oh yeah. Next slide, please. This is my favorite slide because I get to talk about medical stuff. I really like that for some reason, even though I have no interest in a medical career. So we mentioned the death zone. Your brain doesn't like you going up that high. This is all sort of variant symptoms of AMS, acute mountain sickness, which sometimes you just go to base camp and your body doesn't like it and you can't climb the mountain and you might die anyway. And in its sort of like most serious forms, AMS takes sort of three manifestations. There's HACE, HAPE, and HAFE, which I always really enjoy. HACE is a high altitude cerebral edema, which is your brain goes bad. HAPE is a high altitude pneumonal edema, which is your lungs go bad. And then HAFE is high altitude flatulence expulsion, which is you get the farts. These are all like genuine, like recognized symptoms. Two of them can kill you like instantly, stone dead, and the third one is like you get farts. So this is all to do with like localized hypoxia, as is frostbite, which we'll also talk about. But essentially, this like air pressure or lack of it is very, very bad for you. And I include an image of HACE-induced brain herniation, which is when under that lack of pressure,
Kind of
the
looks like
brain
the Batman symbol.
Yeah, so if you see the gap between the brain and the skull, which would normally be full of like meninges and CSF.
Yeah. Ideally, you want your brain to be air gapped. That's kind of important for you to live.
That's brain in there because the brain has just like yeeted itself out into the lining of the skull. It's not good, and this does not make for good cognitive function.
Apart from yeeting itself against your skull, it can also do the other thing, which is quite literally, increase in size and then try to escape out the base of your skull. That is also not good for your continued existence.
Yeah. The E in both of these is edema, which is swelling. And essentially, what's happening is it's your body is trying like fuck to oxygenate you, and it's going too hard, and you just rupture something. You rupture a bunch of blood vessels in your lungs, or your brain swells and like damages itself that way. And the symptoms of these are like unmistakable, progressive, very fast in onset, and can just kill you stone dead if you are not like off the mountain immediately.
Ugh.
Which is where we get to the evacuation bag. This is the thing. Yeah. So it's a relatively recent invention, I think. It's a portable hyperbaric chamber.
It's called a Gammo bag. And I love this picture because it just looks like a fucking ad from the 1980s. Like there should be Coke, or like a Coca-Cola written on the side of this thing. It's great. I love it.
If you're in this, you're not having a good time. Is the thing. Like you're very much having a horrible time. But like for the ad, they can't show that, so it's just like, yeah, check this shit out.
Check it out. Having a good time.
Yeah, so you need to be at a lower altitude, and it's easier to put you in a pressurized environment than it is to get you to a lower altitude. So they just put you in one of these.
This is especially as you get like progressively higher up from like certainly Camp 3 onwards, lowering someone down the Lhotse face and then getting them, in an incapacitated state through the ice falls. You can imagine what it would be like to try to do that.
You got to think they should just be able to roll it down. It's a cylinder. I think that's the
yeah, and
best
then
way
you
to
like
do it.
curve off to the side and like go down like an 8,000 meter drop.
Yeah.
So yeah, what they basically do is they just they fully stick you in there, and then they fill the chamber with oxygen, so it simulates lower altitude, and hopefully that reduces the swelling in your brain, and then you can get down, fingers crossed, on your own 2 feet. But what they have also done in the past is they've taken people who are stuck inside these bags and with ropes lowered them down the Lhotse face back to Camp 2. Which you got to imagine that's got to be quite the trip, because the other thing
I've seen
needs to
these
be
things slung underneath helicopters,
Wild.
Trying to
Out of the
imagine
way,
having
coming through, big bag of oxygen with a guy inside.
and the
Sacco,
thing is,
dude.
you're inside having a bad time, and then this is another problem for rescues with or without this bag. You're having a bad time in a way that may be non-cooperative, right? Because particularly with haze, symptoms of any kind of neurological symptoms can often include confusion, aggression, panic, all things which are not conducive to being helped off a mountain, and much less so when you're inside a big bag.
What they could do, I'm thinking of 2 ways you could do it, is you could have a big slide off the side of the mountain. You just sort of shove them over,
One of those airline slides, just whoosh.
The other thing is, if you had more of a solid thing, is you could have a cannon, right? And then have a parachute attached to it.
I'm listening. I'm always down to hear about cannons.
My mood here is extremely high altitude helicopter that just blows a shitload of other people off the mountain in the course of rescuing you.
No, what I think we should do is build that Korg railway and then get what's the German railway gun again? The Grosse Bertha, and then just move that up there, and we can just shoot people into Tibet. That'd be amazing. The other thing that you have to do in this bag is you see the Coca-Cola woman's doing it with her right foot. Is obviously while you're inside the bag, you're still breathing, and otherwise you get carbon monoxide poisoning. So they have to hand pump with one of those pumps that you would use to do foot pumps that you would use for a little inflatable raft if you're going down a river or something. And you have to foot pump 20 times a minute. At 8,000 meters in altitude to keep your friend alive. Because if you stop pumping, they also die inside the bag.
So this is another thing that would be solved by building the cog railway, is you could get some electricity up there.
Also, if you do tend to get in the bag and then survive it, people do tend to vomit a lot inside the bag. So it'll be very pleasant by the time you get out.
And bear in mind, they're not buying a new bag after each use. You're lucky if they're hosing it out.
They ain't hosing it out. Let's all be honest with each other.
Speaking of hypoxic tissue injuries, if we go to the next slide, very briefly, I apologize in advance if you're grossed out by stuff. Close your eyes for a bit. So we got to talk about frostbite. Frostbite is not generally it's not a proximate cause of death, but it's pretty fucking nasty. This is the least worst picture I could find.
I commend you on the effort of finding a picture that is not a zillion times worse than this.
I wanted one that didn't have any visible necrosis in it. So this is very early stage frostbite, and this is a matter of seconds between this and the really bad kind. So any exposed tissue at high altitude is exposed to a lot of cold, of course, because of both the temperature and the wind. And because your body is trying really hard to oxygenate you. And so you get these hypoxic tissue injuries, most often in the extremities, right? And particularly in the hands, particularly in the feet, and particularly in the face. There's a wild number of professional mountaineers who have just lost their noses because it's one of the first things to go, because you have you might not have, you have goggles on that protect your eyes, and you might have a scarf or a mask or something that protects your mouth, but your nose is more exposed and it might just die. And it swells up, it blisters like this, and then you get necrosis, which is when the tissue dies from lack of oxygen, turns black, and eventually it falls off. And once that's set in, there's nothing you can do about it.
No, once it's black, you are fucked. You are losing it.
Yeah, there's a lot of it's a lot of self-amputation. There's a lot of sort of surgical amputation. When I read Annapurna, one of the things I was struck by was not knowing anything about how to treat frostbite or prevent frostbite when they started getting frostbite, one of the things they did to try and restore blood flow was just start whipping each other.
What?
You can contrive elaborate rituals
but...
to whip other men halfway up a mountain. No, but like, I understand the thought process behind it, but this, of course, makes it much worse because, like, bruised skin. He was
the thought process of just guys being dudes, and I think that's fine. And
yeah. But yeah, so obviously, if you get this, particularly if you get it in the hands and the feet, makes it almost impossible to walk, or hold tools, or like a rope, which it leads to you having a very, very bad time. Do not lose your gloves. Bring a spare pair of gloves. Next slide, please. And if you're
before we move off this
frostbite,
one,
please.
For like a what are the signs of like severe like frostbite, hypothermia? I mean, is like the reverse sensation is that your body feels like it's burning up. So you do find people who have like hypothermia, and they are like half naked and have taken gloves off because they think they're burning up. So
that's fun.
Also, don't get hypothermia.
What you can do to the human body.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, if we go to the next slide, and everyone who has body horror from frostbite, I'm really proud of the visual fucking joke. So sometimes
I almost ruined it for you. I'm so sorry.
It's all right. So you know how I said your eyes are mostly protected? Well, what if they're not? Right. Sometimes being on the mountain, sometimes the mountain just blinds you whenever it feels like it. See attached image. So if you're looking at
what one thing is that I change the background to black when we do the actual slideshow.
It still
works. Imagine this is white.
I thought it worked either way. So I think with snow blindness you mostly see red anyway, because you look at the inside of your own blood vessels. Snow, very, very, very white, very reflective. And you're closer to the sun. There's a lot more UV radiation, which is just bouncing straight off the snow. And if you're ever looking at the sky out of that, directly into your eyes. If you don't have goggles that are protected against UV, then you will just experience snow blindness. You'll just like not be able to see anymore. Which is,
apart from not being able to see at like further advanced stage of snow blindness, it can feel like you are constantly having sand in your eyes, which must feel delightful. Or you can literally no longer open them; they just shut. And once again, much like the pressure bag, try rescuing someone who's slow blind when you yourself are already fatigued and disoriented, maybe from submitting Everest, and then taking them, by the gloved hand, pray to God, and then leading them off the mountain without them teetering off the side because they can't see shit.
Yeah,
so it's like it's like when I accidentally touched my eyes after handling a Carolina Reaper 2 days ago.
Dumbass.
I'm not the dumbass. The co-op is the dumbass for not stocking any other kind of pepper.
You're right. Okay,
if you're like, it's fine. I have my like expensive goggles. I'm not going to lose them. I brought an extra pair of goggles. I'm not going to go blind on Mount Everest. Wrong. You can just do this anyway because another low pressure injury. You can get retinal hemorrhages. Which much as they sound like, it's really bad for your blood vessels, and you need those. And if you have a blood vessel in your retina that's like supplying your eye with blood, like ruptures, you don't see anything potentially. You just see.
I'm just thinking about that really weird Silicon Valley guy with the blood boy. Like, would he bring his blood boy up there and just like yank his retinas out?
The thing is, it's not the blood; it's the blood vessels. You would need to do some interesting sort of like transplant surgery. But yeah, no. So you can just go blind out of nowhere. There was a guy who died doing exactly this because he summited, and then on the descent was like blinded instantly because I guess God picked him out and was like, nope, not this one.
Nope.
And perhaps unsurprisingly, died on the mountain.
Not sufficiently virtuous.
Yeah. Next slide, please. So. By way of closing, like, how do you avoid all this stuff? How do we climb Everest as reliably as we do, even though it's a dangerous enterprise? My short answer is oil.
Oh,
yeah.
Oil.
Petrochemicals.
Petrochemicals, plastics. Because now we have waterproof insulating clothes as opposed to wool that gets soaked.
we have Gore-Tex, which is an incredibly unpleasant manufacturing process and also very hard to recycle or impossible, I think.
Oh, totally
even still.
unsustainable. Yeah. But tell you what, keeps you warm and dry. You have like stronger ice axes, stronger crampons. A lot of the old guys, you saw them just used like a fucking alpenstock, just a wood pole.
Which is fucking boss, like a wood pole with like a metal or an aluminium like pick on it. Like boss that you do that, but also incredibly heavy, by the way. And also one of those things, because we were talking a little bit earlier about like don't fall. Like most people, if not everybody, has like their ice axe like attached with a sling to their hands, because if you drop it, you are in real big trouble. But if you slip and you start falling, and then you drop your ice axe, all of a sudden your ice axe is like wildly flailing about the mountain and maybe hitting you whilst you shoot down the mountain.
Very sharp.
There is that.
Also.
Yeah, as are crampons, which are also very pointy.
But portable oxygen, the single biggest thing, if I had to point to anything, was the kind of thing that when it was first developed, mountaineers thought it was cheating because people's ascent rates, went up by a factor of 10. It's ridiculous how much having access to like pure oxygen makes you better at climbing. Again, the limiting factor is like you got to carry it up there, or someone has to carry it up there, but it makes all of this stuff possible. Better goggles, all of this stuff's lighter, so you can carry it more easily. Also, this is a strange detail, but I picked this up from a lot of mountaineering memoirs. The one thing that like mountaineers in particular I've noticed cite as the difference that made this kind of like golden age of mountaineering possible isn't oxygen, it's rubber soles for boots.
Wow.
Like Vibram soles, the grip is
rubber.
so much better.
Yeah,
wild. I have a couple of sets of boots with Vibram on it, and like it is truly ridiculously awesome stuff. Like the grip and the staying power, and like it's not indestructible, but it takes a real beating before it wears and tears. It is pretty spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, even when it's frozen. I mean, it's wild. All right. So that's how we do it. But sometimes the answer to how do you conquer all this stuff is you don't. You just die. And with that in mind,
and you deserve it.
Our final presentation. Next slide, please. Ways you died.
Wait,
you did die. Congratulations.
Congratulations, you're dead.
Yeah.
It was actually, it used to say, ways the mountain did kill you land.
God damn. Yeah. So you have stepped
I really appreciate, Roz, that your willingness to stick to a bit, even in the face of overwhelming displeasure and hatred.
Love you so much, man. You have stepped off the Hillary step, and God is now giving you this presentation with like a stick, right? So next slide, please. Obviously, people have been dying on Everest since 1924 at the earliest, but I thought a good place to start would be 1996 because it was like it changed a lot of the culture around mountaineering.
Yeah, it was also the one where the broader public sort of went, "Whoa, what are people doing up there?" And it was also after the advent of, like we said, this was about a decade after Dick Bass and the advent of expensive adventure tourism. So what you get is the 1996 disaster. John Krakauer wrote a very, very famous book called Into Thin Air about it. Although, as its companion, you should probably also read, if you want to, Anatoly Bukriev's The Climb, because there is certainly, let me put it mildly, some dispute over what exactly went on. And
climbers love to put out like dueling books. Annapurna and True Summit, Into Thin Air, and The Climb. There's like dozens of these.
Yeah. Later on, the two mega Austrians, or Messer and Hadler, also fell out and did dueling books.
This is where mountaineers litigate stuff. Is in books.
Yeah. So a total of 8 climbers die in a window of about 24 hours. The whole thing was later made into the movie Everest, which is surprisingly okay and quite good, if wildly harrowing. And not maybe in that sense not a Valentine treat. Anyway, so what happens in 1996? This is in the sort of early days of commercial climbing. Two teams called one expedition called Adventure Consultants, the other one called Mountain Madness. Great name, by the way.
I would not go with
I'm-
fucking Joker expedition.
Yeah, I was about to say, we've got on one hand, we have Mountain Madness, which is full of madmen who are going to do stupid things. And on the other hand, we have Adventure Consultants who are like a McKinsey operation.
Oh, yeah. Where's that flash of that picture of Pete Butchug at, yeah.
So they both go up on May 10th, and by May 11th, it is a total shit show. This is partly because there's considerable rivalry between the established, sort of well-known operation team called Adventure Consultants and also the brand new team, Mountain Madness.
Mountain Madness, yeah. They really were mad.
Kills you instantly expeditions.
You will die, Incorporated.
Mountain Madness was then led by a very, very experienced American mountaineer called Scott Fisher. But one of the underlying problems of all this is both teams need to make the money for the season, and they need to make a name for themselves for the future season. So both of them have a strong commercial imperative to get all their clients up and back down, so they, in the next year's brochures, can say, "Hey, we got everybody up and down." But in terms of, like we said, there's a difference between the two. And Mountain Madness had taken on a number of clients that maybe ought not to have been there. Noted that none of their clients had experience of being over 8,000 meters in the first place.
This is now not unusual, which is
not,
a sign of how much worse things have gotten.
Basically, like what happens in terms of the actual practicalities, it is a series of small errors that lead to terrible, terrible outcomes for 8 people, including a number of fixed ropes that were supposed to have been set up by the Sherpas but weren't, which includes an hour-long wait at the base of the Hillary Step while the Sherpas put one up anyway. You can imagine, that kind of throws your timing off. Basically, what happens is there's a series of much further delays, which means that everybody gets to the summit, apart from a few who turn around and say, "I'm not feeling this. This is not going well. I'm booking it." Everybody else makes it to the summit, but they make it down late. Basically, the cutoff time to get to the summit is about 2 p.m. I think they were still summiting at 3:30. Those are not windows you can have at this altitude at this time.
I have a question regarding like having experience over 8,000 meters. Is there like an easy 8,000 meter mountain you can climb so you get that experience beforehand?
No, absolutely not.
No, I mean, this is the thing. There are mountains that are that don't have the Everest experience. Like you can climb like Aconcagua or like Denali, and get acclimated that way, but you have to be a mountaineer to do that. So, if you don't want to do that,
a lot of people prepare for this stuff much lower down, but they either do technically much more demanding things, which like sort of creates a series of sort of physical automated reactions that you don't have if you are just a client of one of these companies, or you spend more time at altitude and you have more time to acclimatize, and you simply have a body that does that. Some people's bodies don't react or don't react well. Others do. That's kind of a genetics, coin flip kind of thing. It is at this point, after people start coming down much later than planned, that the weather takes a turn for the decidedly much worse. And in the middle of the afternoon and into the evening, a full-blown blizzard strikes up with snow pelts of more than 70 miles an hour hitting you in the face, basically.
Yeah,
which is
like
no.
No.
Apart from being hit in the face at 70 miles an hour, one of the expedition leaders, I believe this was Scott Fisher, started to suffer from either HAPE or HACE or both, and
maybe even HAPE. No clue on the farts.
Yeah.
Jesus.
But basically, he was no longer mentally and mostly physically not capable anymore to do anything because his brain was being scrambled. The other thing that happens, of course, in a high-speed blizzard is that the fixed lines get buried in mounds of new snow, which means you can't clip from one rope into the other very easily. The visibility, of course, goes to shit. And critically as well, the existing trail that everybody had stomped out next to the guiding lines got wiped out as well. So now you don't know where the guideline is. You can't see. The trail is gone, and your mountain leader is either already dead or like non-responsive, basically. So the end result is, we won't go into too much detail, but it is incredibly unpleasant. 8 people die, 6 people die of exposure on the mountain. 2, we think, die from falling off the mountain. I mean, their bodies have never been found, so we don't know. And it is just a horrendous day all round on Everest. Yeah. And
gets
many people
worse on the next one, though.
Yeah, many people learn lessons from this, sensible lessons. Next slide, please.
2014. Yeah, so we've had an intervening few years of like Everest being a machine, being an industry that works very well, and that industry depends on sending Sherpas on these like positioning routes through the Khumbu Icefall to move all the shit. And this is a very dangerous thing. Everyone knows it's dangerous. That's why we make Sherpas do it. And then, well, inevitably, this is what happens.
Yeah. I mean, you can see it on the slide. It's fairly self-explanatory. A very large block of rock detaches from the hanging glacier above. The estimates are that it's about 35 meters thick and weighs about 32 million tons. And it breaks off and it falls pretty much dead on top of the Sherpa teams creating the route through the icefall, killing 16 in total.
Huge Serac. Just hits a bunch of them. An avalanche hits like a couple more, I think.
Jesus.
Yeah. They were in the field. They were making the route, but they were also very slow because they were carrying tents and stoves and other things needed to pre-stock the higher camps for the commercial season. It was, a disastrous loss of life. It's hard to talk about in sort of a facile vein. And for their work while, dying, basically, each of these Sherpa earned about $125 a day while doing this very difficult, very expertise work.
Christ.
$125 a day.
Yeah, I mean, but by like Nepalese standards, being a Sherpa is like a well-paying job. But that's kind of the problem, is that they're being paid well by Nepalese standards to do a job that like people are also paid very well by American standards to do.
Yes.
Like no American professional climber would ever accept, the sort of that little money to do the same thing.
I think the minimum legal standard for like a Swiss mountain guide is like 600 francs a day, and that's for easy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's excluding like food and lodging and stuff that you also contribute to if you hire a Swiss mountain guide. So, just to give you an indication of the difference. Each of the families did get, after big protests and things that happened afterwards.
I have some thoughts about those on the next slide.
Yeah. We'll talk about that. And we'll just get to the next slide. And also, just as a side note, this icefall gets more dangerous every single year because of climate change.
Cool.
That makes this more unstable and more unpredictable with every season and every year.
So it's at this point I'd like to recommend a fairly searing documentary that's just called Sherpa. That was following this climbing season, and speaks to the sort of like immense racism with which these people are treated in their workplace, because after over a dozen of their friends and their colleagues had been killed, expedition companies continue to try and push them to work, and this ultimately led to a strike by Sherpas, which like ended up ending that year's season, which it wasn't even intended to do. All they wanted was a pause. And if you watch the documentary, the expedition organizers, in particular Russell Bryce from Himax, is a massive piece of shit. Alternately try and like cajole and threaten and lie and bully these people into going back to work. It's intimately familiar from anyone who's ever been in like a strike or a labor dispute, it's absolutely familiar boss behavior, but it's happening at like 6,000 meters. Um,
Yeah.
and what's really striking about it too is you see the clients who are sitting in their like very nice tents
Yeah.
complaining.
Yeah, because
Part of
there's
the re-
like, I think at this point there's between like 400 and 600 like clients who have paid to do this, and they're
Mm.
just sitting in their tents and they're waiting. And of course, the orthodontist from Ohio, it doesn't want to wait.
Yeah, and this is another thing with like weather windows as well. Is there are a lot of especially the cheaper expedition companies kind of make their money by people not climbing Everest, because it's people who like aren't able to do it or are forced back or don't have the weather window who still end up paying for like the next year when they can do. Um, but there are companies, especially on the more expensive end, that will sort of purport to guarantee you the best possible chance, and people tend to read that as like, I will absolutely go up Everest this year. I will, uh, I've paid this money. I'm not going to have to like pay it again
Yeah,
next year to come back.
give me my goddamn high altitude treat, roughly speaking.
Exactly.
I do like the idea of the Sherpa foreman saying down tools, and they just leave
there's
everyone at
literally
Camp
footage,
3.
yeah. I mean, that's basically
Yeah.
what happened, and things got genuinely very, very heated. I mean, there have been sort of like there's been ill feeling before, and one of the things that's most infuriating about the movie is the kind of like the fetish that the guys like Bryce make out of the kind of like good relations that they have with the Sherpas, which is sort of a cultural misunderstanding where Sherpa people are willing to like be polite to you and smile at you and sort of like be deferential to a point. That there was one thing where like two Austrian climbers nearly started a riot at base camp because of some cultural norms. Like one of them had like gotten into an altercation with a Sherpa, and he called him a son of a bitch, and that's like not that offensive in English, but it's like a sort of mortal insult. And it very nearly ended up with like people threatening each other with ice axes and stuff. Um, so yeah, and ultimately what happened is that this killed the season for the year, as well it might have done, but they sent the Nepalese Minister of Tourism out, and the Nepalese government has too much money in tourism, and ultimately said go back to work, and this is still simmering years
Yeah,
later. So,
yeah. Yeah, there have been altercations since a couple of years ago, with fistfights about people saying things and going up fixed lines when they were not supposed to. It's still very fraught, and obviously these Sherpas who are doing this incredibly dangerous, highly skilled work up the mountain, have what I think is very good, sort of an increasing sense of their own dignity and value, and then just no longer want to just take anything and everything thrown at them, which I think is more than good for them.
yeah, absolutely.
More than overdue.
If we go to the next slide.
Yeah.
2015, which is like a much
Jesus
wider
Christ.
tragedy. That this is it could be an episode on its own. So so Nepal got hit with a massive earthquake in 2015. Which
it's like an 8.7 or something. It's like
it was
crazy.
wild. Yeah. Absolutely devastated the whole country. And I mean, like places where it took like weeks to get like anything like rescue in, because it's like in very remote valleys that are now even harder to get to. This also did affect Everest directly though, because a couple of avalanches just swept through base camp, and just took out like a bunch of people, killed like 22 people, I think. I think the first one like took out the medical tent even. So you had people trying to sort of like do first aid on like the side of a mountain at already very high altitudes, covered in presumably turds, because this being base camp.
Yeah.
It's just it's real bad. And the
It
part
also it also in referencing a couple slides ago, removed the Hillary step, because that's now fundamentally different, which in a weird like side plot to this whole thing. For like a couple years, the Nepalese Ministry of Tourism tried to deny that the earthquake had like shifted the Hillary step, because it's so iconic that they thought if it wasn't there anymore, less people would come.
Yeah, I mean the whole economy is like absolutely dependent on this one mountain, which is not sustainable. And on the idea that the mountain will never change and will always be climbable, as First of all, as the glacier retreats more and more and more of the Khumbu icefall
Yeah.
melts, this is kind of a prefiguring a thing, which is that ultimately Everest Base Camp is going to have to be abandoned. Like it cannot continue to be used past a certain point because it just will no longer be safe.
Yeah.
What that means for climbing the mountain, I don't know.
I mean, they'll recite it somewhere, but like the frequency of reciting and the placing and it will all change, and none of it will be for the good, and it will contribute, as we always do, to killing the very things we pretend to love.
Mm-hmm. And the thing that drives me particularly insane about this is that after the earthquake had killed 22 people on Everest and like thousands in Nepal, pretty much immediately clients started like pushing for their ability to climb anyway.
Cool.
And then the next expedition went up 4 days afterwards, which. Yeah, just you want to talk about like walking past dead bodies. It's not necessarily like, sort of stumbling past someone in the death zone. It's this.
Yeah, it's literally turning your back on the ruins of base camp and saying, well, we're off to have our adventure now because we paid for it. It is an exceeding inhumanity that would let you do that. And yeah, not a good sign. And unfortunately, we didn't learn anything. Next slide, please.
Yes.
This is 2019. It's a good day to be on Everest, as you can tell. You see the guy in the foreground sitting down because there's a queue now. I think you can just see the Hillary step on that just below that little snowfield in the sun on the left-hand side of the ridge.
Over here.
But yeah, this is 2019. It was, I hate to be the bearer of surprising news, but it was very overcrowded that day. This wasn't one single thing like avalanche or a weather front moving in. But basically, this is the tragedy of overcrowding. That year, 381 permits have been issued, which was the highest ever number on record. But of course, you have to remember that each of these people has to have a Sherpa with them, as per the law. So more like 800 and some odd people in reality are going up the mountain. This is partially driven by a new influx. Money from India and China now wants to get up there. This is no longer the white man's thing. It's the new money wants to get in on the action, have the same bragging rights at the same god-awful Davos conference centers. So, on the day itself, because this was quite a small good weather window after a long session of sitting still, basically, this is about 200 people trying to make the summit, which is madness. You look at that and you think, I mean, this is apart from a desecration of a mountain and a sport and I don't know what this is anymore. Because it was so long. Some people spent between 10 and 12 hours making the summit. Most of them spent like this, waiting.
Yeah, you're just queuing.
Yeah.
Queuing. And then another 4 to 6 going down back to Camp 4. Again, in the same queue because there's one set of fixed lines and you can't just pass each other. This also meant that like nobody had enough oxygen for that. So that meant that the Sherpas had to like turn down your oxygen flow to like a bare minimum to keep you alive, but maybe not making good decisions. Or some of them, because of the prevailing attitudes and the way these people are treated, ended up giving up their own oxygen supplies to people who were dead or dying up there. It is an immense human tragedy that killed a whole bunch of people for absolutely no good reason. And it's only possible because the Nepalese government cannot say no to the hard currency that this brings in. Nepal is dirt poor, and because it's Nepal, nobody gave a shit after the earthquake, and we've just kind of left them to sit alone in the rubble, as the West is wont to do when something else happens online. Yeah, it's a desecration of something that should be a monument to human achievement, and it makes me want to throw up.
There's a thing that's I think one of the bleakest things from Sherpa was that so it's a Sherpa sort of like religious observance to before climbing the mountain you ask the mountain for permission to climb it, right? which is, I think it's a nice thing if nothing else. And this is now part of the tourist experience. It's sort of a spectacle. Because if people are able to climb and they're told that it's safe to climb, then they will. And increasingly, you see this with people who. There was this woman, a Canadian woman from Toronto called Shreya Shah Clawfin. Um, she died on Everest climbing it, and no climbing experience whatsoever. Like catastrophically irresponsible to accept her as a client. She had to be taught how to use crampons, like at base camp.
That's a common story. People needing to learn how to wield an ice axe, how to put on crampons, how to put on their gear, how it works, what a Jumar is, like stuff that I don't know. Like I know how to put on my crampons. I know how to do basic stuff with an ice axe. I wouldn't come within 1,000 fucking miles of Everest. Apart from the fucking queues and this disgusting shit, but
for this to be the first mountain that you climb is like
and the
unbelievable
last
hubris. Well, also yes,
on the last,
I mean, this isn't necessarily the most important thing here in terms of what we're desecrating, but I think mountaineering as a sport, as a discipline, as insane as various German, Austrian men are, they may have had a point that like once it was proven that it was physically possible to climb Everest without oxygen, that it should only be climbed without oxygen. Because, if nothing else, you wouldn't leave so many oxygen canisters up there. But also, it would still be sort of like a technical, physical challenge.
It would be an immense test of your technical and physical skills. You, like this woman with no experience, wouldn't even get to base camp. No way on God's earth.
Yeah,
like
yeah, it's wild. And the thing is, this is spilling over to other mountains too. Like it used to be a point at which like you could still do this kind of like extreme mountaineering on Annapurna or on K2 or on Kanchenjunga, and it was less sort of touristic, and that's still true. People are sort of like most interested in Everest, but like it's spilling over as well. And as more people go and summit Everest, it kind of devalues its currency at Davos or whatever. And so now increasingly you see people whose idea
K2.
of extreme tourism is they want to do K2 or they want to do like multiple summits. And they want to say that they did, all of the 8,000 meter peaks, and you get
they do something exotic, like I'm going to be the first person to bring my cat to the top of Everest.
Can you imagine Toby on that shit?
Yeah,
there was a. There was. I did put it in the notes. I'm trying to remember if it was produced by the Discovery Channel. I think it was, or some American company. They did like it was like a sort of a documentary series season. I don't know, not a competition thing, but they were like. They had 8 climbers attempting Everest, and they all had like various disabilities. So there's one guy with one leg, I think a woman who was blind, and like. I'm not saying that if you are disabled or differently abled that you cannot do things at the extremes of human potential. But I watched one half of an episode and I was just like, but there are brilliant climbers who are differently abled or who are missing limbs or who can't see or anything. But they have done that for years and years, and they don't do this as like a vehicle to get their Instagram to blow up. And
it's the relationship of Everest to disability is a really interesting one because, again, I think just as you say, like, yeah, there's a lot of times when it's like absolutely laudable, but equally, I think disabled or not, there's this kind of like real disease of record breaking.
Right.
Where
yes.
if you're seeking
understanding the sanctity of it, basically.
Yeah. You're like seeking it for yourself, or you're using it to like prove you or your community's determination to something, and it gets really, really tenuous at times. It's like to be like, I'm the 27th left-handed person to climb Everest or whatever. And it's like, I don't have any interest. Like, I'm sure there's already been a first trans person to climb Everest, right? But like, I would have no interest because, like, what does that have to do with us? It doesn't say anything other than the kind of like vague platitudes about like determination and like strength and stuff. And it's like the old joke: Everest is like littered with the corpses of extremely determined people.
Yes.
There are ethics here, and there are ethical concerns that I think you can be absolutely reductive about it at the end of the day and be like, well, don't fucking go. And I think you'll be onto something more than the person who is sort of like, seeking to raise a bunch of money to stand up to cancer or whatever on top of a mountain.
To raise awareness or something gross like that. Like just don't, and also if nothing else, you and your dumbass, wanting to be the 28th left-handed person on Everest might die up there, but chances are not unreasonable that you'll take a bunch of Sherpas with you.
Fuck no one deserves to die for your stupidity. Only you deserve to die for your stupidity.
Yeah.
And you do deserve.
Oh, 100%.
Let's be very clear on that.
Yeah, and to think we could have avoided all of this by building the cog railway.
If we had simply built the cog railway, at least up to Camp 4, this is not like an insurmountable engineering challenge.
I do love the idea of Roz like single-handedly, but not letting anyone on except the Sherpa. Like,
no, that's what I'm imagining when the Sherpas down tools and they leave all the rich people at Camp 3 and they take the secret escalator down.
Come on, everybody aboard. Let's go. We are no dwell time.
It's just capitalism, really, and I guess capitalism and egotism, two things hand in hand. If you have like any kind of like passion, especially in outdoors ones, come for that too. Whatever it is, but you look at like rich people like imploding themselves, and also like a Titanic historian of some repute trying to look at the Titanic, and it's like, no, this money poisons everything it touches.
Yeah. If you want to just go up a mountain, you know what you can do? You can go to Switzerland. You could take a cog railway.
It's true.
Pretty far up.
You could have a pretty decent meal at the James Bond themed restaurant.
Yes.
Exactly.
At the Pittsburgh.
You can go way up a mountain and then you meet a cow.
You're just like, how did you get here?
It just says
go up the Jungfraujoch and fucking don't leave Everest alone,
Yeah. Until we build the Everest cog railway.
But speaking as someone who really does love these mountains here in Switzerland and like thinks they're very beautiful, can I suggest that you only go up the Jungfraujoch and you all stay there and don't bother me when I'm doing something where I want to be left alone and not have a million jackasses with me?
Yeah. No, I have
Everyone
been up
go hang out with Rob.
I apologize.
Rob cannot wait to greet you.
No, that's fine. But like, just that one, just
Yeah, keep it there. Keep it like close to Geneva, and don't leave all the normal people to like go climb like unsurveyed peaks in the Ober unter Hinterobergurgel or whatever.
Yes.
Exactly. All right. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this, trip through capitalism and also Everest.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
This was good. Yeah. Subscribe to our Patreon so we can build the cog railway. But first, we have to do a segment on this podcast called Safety Third.
Shake hands for danger.
Oh, and also listen to Podcasting as Practice before we do Safety Third.
Yeah.
Now, Safety Third.
Safety Third.
Yeah, please do that.
Hello, Alice, Roz, Ye, Liam, ex or guest.
You did it.
So,
you got it.
So actually, only hello to Rob.
How did they know my name? My name is indeed Zor.
You passed, but barely.
Oh, been there.
This story comes from a construction site in Vermont. Shortly after the turn of the millennium, building a new recreation center at a ski resort.
Ooh, what snow today.
Hey.
Topical. I was a dumb young high schooler, and the company was run by the father of a friend, so it was an easy way to land the job and make enough money to pay for a gaming computer for myself.
Don't do things we do for gaming computers.
Yeah,
yes.
Like record this podcast. My ass is falling asleep.
On a big job like this, you would have lots of specialized contractor teams, each of whom has a specialized niche that they fulfill. I was on the air sealing and insulation crew.
Cool.
We would air seal all of the cracks and seams between the outside wall framing studs with specialized insulation foam and silicone caulk. I like to describe my job as squeezing caulk between two studs, which was something that had the advantage of pissing off my homophobic coworkers while also being completely true.
Very easy to piss off a homophobic commenter, apparently.
Yeah. After we were done air sealing, other trades would come through to do wiring, plumbing, and etc. And then we'd go back through the wet spray cellulose insulation into the wall cavities where it would be then sheetrocked over. This was the much harder half of the job, and we were typically pulled 60 hours a week or more. The only people who would be on site longer were the Mexican rockers.
Okay.
Yes.
Mexican sheetrock refers to a specific kind of nut.
It's only if it's from the Mexico region of
Oaxaca,
Mexico. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just sparkling gypsum board.
Yeah.
After the
I think it's actually a
installation,
sister club of the Sons of Anarchy.
The Mexican sheetrock.
Mexican sheetrockers. After the insulation was installed, a building would then have a leak test where the doors and windows would be closed and air compressors used to create a positive pressure environment and combined with smoke machines to look for leaks.
Hell yeah. Hotbox the ski resort.
Yeah. This is where our story proper begins, because in the new recreation center building we were helping to build for the ski mountain, it had failed the leak test in 2 locations. One was an exterior facing window 30 feet above what was destined to be a racquetball court, and the other was where the roofing trusses, see slide 1,
Yeah, it's a roofing truss.
met the corner wall of another part of the building. This was also above a racquetball court, but a different racquetball court, because you need so many.
What is a house, isn't it?
No, it's a rec center for a ski resort.
I mean, I love
ski
going
resort,
skiing
right.
and then, like, in the evening doing a jaunty game of racquetball. That's
yeah,
a sensible
apparently,
fucking thing
a
to be
lot
doing.
of people like doing that. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Weird.
I hate
Since I have a deathly fear of heights, I declined to take the 40-foot extension ladder to go reseal the window
Pussy.
frame, and consequently got volunteered for the roofing truss
Yeah, you deserved it.
because the new guys got the scut work. I've never heard that word before. Now, part of the reason I brought up all that context, because usually when we were doing air sealing, it was in the stage of construction where all that was there was framing 2x6s and plywood or chipboard, which is heretical trash. That meant that we could easily get into all the weird crevices and nooks, since for the most part, we could just step through the framing timbers of the walls.
Oh yeah.
However, this was after a leak test had failed and the building was most of the way done. You know, they had done the sheetrock, the electrical, the plumbing, the windows, and everything was already installed. What that meant in this case was that the sheetrock was also done already, so a hole had to be cut for me to get into the ceiling. See slide 2.
Don't love this already.
No.
Yeah.
No.
No,
I climbed up.
no.
I climbed up the
feeling
ladder.
real bad already.
I climbed up the ladder and wormed my way into the hole cut into the sheetrock. My crude MS Paint skills are making it seem larger than it actually was. The gap was only about 14 inches across, and there was a non-trivial amount of wiring I had to negotiate, and I had to make full use of my adolescent build to get through and into the ceiling cavity.
I like the Saddam Hussein meme.
Yes. At this stage in my life, I was skinny enough to count ribs through a t-shirt, something which is adamantly no longer the case.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. With me
Okay,
came my hard
so
hat.
basically he's like a sheetrock chimney sweep.
Yes. With me came my hard hat, since this was a construction site, one of those shitty old flashlights like you see flickering out in horror movies, and about 4 cans of spray foam.
Yeah, just get in there and spray it around.
Yeah. The
Have a
horror
good
movie
time.
comparison feels apt, since, well, there was a tiny bit of ambient light that came through the hole I had crawled into that wasn't really angled anywhere near where I needed to go and fill with foam, and it wasn't particularly bright. I won't use phrases such as Stygian abyss, since that'd be going too far, but it should put you in the right frame of mind. I don't know what a Stygian abyss is.
Like the river Styx?
Maybe.
It's not particularly abyssal.
It's the pit.
whatever.
It's the pit of hell, basically. Like
It's the pit of hell. Okay, yeah. Air sealed in this case also meant light sealed, so it really just was just me and trusty old Mr. Flashlight.
Oh hey.
I quickly started crawling through the framing truss
Cool.
towards the suspect corner. This was kind of like playing on the jungle gym on a playground, except that all the bars were in the same line and the vertical clearance was rapidly approaching 0. I had been told not to walk on the sheetrock of the ceiling, since doing so could easily put my foot through it and plummet me to my death 40 feet below.
You just die in a racquetball court.
Oh,
Yeah.
what an embarrassing.
Well,
way
it
to go.
wasn't enough for there merely to be the raw concrete of the racquetball court. Unlike my coworker's court, which had been fully emptied so she could get the ladder in position to the window, mine was full of tools, toolboxes, and nice, happy, fun things like table saws and chop saws. So if I did fall through the sheetrock, grisly impalement on unforgiving steel tools was guaranteed rather than merely pancaking onto soft and forgiving concrete. See slide 3.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Sorry, was your supervisor like the weird puppet from the Saw movies?
Okay, so this is Junior Prince of Persia.
Yeah.
Now, something I want to clarify is that while my MS Paint drawings and the provided reference figure of a ceiling truss make it seem like there's a lot of room for crawling around, there absolutely was not. There was a low-angle roof meant to handle the snowfall weight of a ski resort. Justin probably knows the figures better than I do. 30 pounds per square foot. But that means it's expected to handle several tons of snow and have room for safety margin. Everything was 2x6s at least, and that meant that there quickly stopped being room for me to try and reach the corner, as there stopped being room between the truss timbers long before that corner was actually reached. My first attempt to get further in was to discard my hard hat, as I wasn't particularly worried about falling debris, since I was inside the ceiling space, and this was at the end of the day after everyone except us and the sheetrockers had gone home. While discarding the hard hat did give me a few inches further clearance, it also subjected me to the occasional poke from a roofing nail sticking through, but as long as I was careful, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Okay, right. Safety defeated.
Yes. The bigger problem is I still couldn't get anywhere near the leaking corner. As scrawny as I wasn't scrawny enough. So that's when I did what I never should have done and began to test the load-bearing capacity of the sheetrock. Now, for those listening at home not familiar with the construction trades, sheetrock is somewhere between chalk and banana bread in terms of structural integrity. Most of the actual cohesion comes only from the paper it's sandwiched in. It would have been screwed into the same framing trusses I was walking across, and while I'm confident the screws would hold my weight, I was not confident the sheetrock would. Do not ever do what I did in the story. It's a miracle I'm still alive. Regardless of the insane risk, the sheetrock somehow held, and I made sure, as well as I could, to spread my weight out in what little room there was between the two trusses closest to the wall, squirmed out on my belly towards the leaking corner. The fit was so tight I couldn't actually look at the corner. I had my arm at full extension to shoot the foam gun and also point my flashlight in the corner at the same time, so I had to play kind of a juggling act of wiggling my arm into the extension, pushing myself as far into the corner as I could, spraying a bunch of foam, backing up to the point where gaps existed once more in the trusses adjacent to me, so I could move my arms again, maneuver my flashlight into position so I can illuminate the corner, adjust my head so I could see the corner, see that there was still areas not yet coated in foam, and then repeat that process. Basically, roof truss.
I quit.
Yeah, roof truss spelunking.
No,
I cut myself through the sheetrock beneath me and go to my death at that point. Like,
bonus difficulty came when I needed to replace the cans for my foam gun, but eventually I emptied all the cans in the corner and figured if that isn't enough, nothing I can achieve here will be, and worked my way back towards Milkshake. Get out of the way. Worked my way back towards an area of the ceiling tall enough to get off my belly and cease my cave diver impression.
There's nothing here worth dying for, you know.
It was at this point when I recovered my hard hat and looked back around.
By Smith & Wesson.
Yeah.
It was at this point when I recovered my hard hat and looked back around to try and start working my way back to the entrance point. I realized the ambient light had gone from minimal to 0. I worked my way deeper along the length of the roof. Milkshake, get out of the way. Okay, he's gone. I worked my way deeper along the length of the roof so I could look at the wall I had come in directly rather than just the angled forest of trusses, and came to the inescapable conclusion that I had been walled into the ceiling.
For the love of God.
At some point, one of the sheetrockers had obviously come through, seen the hole, and covered it complete with spackle.
Right, so sheetrock, very easy to get through when it's going to pitch you onto a racquetball court. Very difficult when it's going to like get you out to safety.
I shined my flashlight
It's
along
weird. Why
the
does the
sheetrock.
next sentence read, everything smells of amontillado here?
I shined my flashlight along the sheetrock, and I had no way of telling where I'd come in. And while the rat's nest of wiring precluded some of the gaps in the framing, they didn't give me enough of a frame of reference to even begin to start. I knew that to kick my way through the sheetrock would be trivially easy, but even if I came through at the right spot, a 10-foot drop awaited me, and if I came through at the wrong spot, the aforementioned 40-foot drop onto steel tools similarly awaited me. My literally paralyzing fear of heights kept me from making any rash decisions, so I began to yell, holler, and scream and shout in the vain hopes that someone could hear me. I had to say, working on a construction crew teaches you words and phrases that would make a sailor blush. And I made full use of my repertoire to express my frustration with myself, my coworkers, the sheetrockers, and the universe in general.
Invented a new anti-Mexican slur. Invented
Yes.
racism too.
Yes. Even as I did it, I knew it was in vain hope because, as I mentioned before, us on the insulation crew and the Mexican sheetrockers were the only people who stayed on site after 4. I also knew my coworker wouldn't hear me because the plan had been that after she did the much easier job of sealing the leaky window, she'd move on to another trouble spot in a different building. I had the dumb luck that blesses adolescences and allows us to survive into adulthood. Not long after I had started my tirade, the site overseer from the firm managing the job site was doing his end-of-day rounds before officially closing the site and happened to hear me. He got a different ladder since mine had naturally been stolen when the hole was sealed up behind me. He got a reciprocating saw.
Free ladder. I get paid for sealing up this hole with this handy ladder.
Yeah. He got a reciprocating saw and cut a new hole for me to get out of. My understanding is that the sheetrockers got read the riot act, and I learned a valuable lesson. Don't go in the hole.
Don't go in
Find
hole.
spaces, don't do it.
Yeah. I actually met back up with my old boss a few years ago when one of his sons was getting married and related the story to him then. I had assumed he had heard about it through the grapevine, but apparently he had never heard, so I was able to get a few good laughs from it. Even now, it remains one of my better stories. I hope you got as much enjoyment from it as I did, and keep up the good work.
As much enjoyment, not as much terror.
Yeah.
Please do not do this.
Don't go in the hole.
In the
Yeah.
hole.
Yeah. I know there's, those memes you kids like so much about this is my hole, etc. But don't
Don't actually go in the hole.
don't,
If you
don't
see
become the little meme boy.
if you see a hole that looks like it was made for you, don't go in it.
No,
No,
it was
Someone's
not made
trying
for
to
you.
trick you. Anyway, that was Safety Third.
Shake hands for danger.
Our next episode will be on Chernobyl. Does anyone have any commercials before we go?
Yeah, Rob, if the people want more Rob, where can they find you?
If the people want more Rob and the occasional Liam and Roz, though no Alice yet, but maybe one day, they
happy
can
to, yeah.
listen to Podcasting is Praxis. It can be found where good and also bad podcasts can be found everywhere. We're on Patreon. It's the usual deal. Mainly, we deal in the exceeding levels of misery that is living in Britain. So yeah, it's that kind of deal. But occasionally
Heard
we
of this
watch
place.
movies and have a better time of it. Yeah, and that's about it. That's all I got to plug.
It's a good podcast. I enjoy listening to it. It's like Trash Future, but different. Yeah.
It's like Trash YouTube, but good. I can co-sign that one. Yeah.
I can't say that. We're too.
Yeah, we're like the
too-
supermarket own brand version of Trash Future. It's
Yes, the super
Those things
test.
are always
Great
better
value.
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the same. They make it in the same factory. I guess all I can say is
Subscribe to
here's to
the
900,000 more subscribers.
That's
Get
right.
on it.
That's right.
Bully your
Get-
friends.
Get 9
Kill your
people.
parents. Kill your
Yeah.
parents.
Well, have them subscribe before you kill them.
And then kill your parents.
Yeah, we're doing like Tammany Hall stuff. We're enlisting subscribers from the dead.
Yeah. Go to the graveyard and start subscribing.
Make 9
all those
YouTube
guys.
accounts.
Yes.
Don't you want to
just
make us happy?
go to your
Let's go.
demented aunt's house and grab one of those pre-approved credit cards and just sign her up.
Yes.
It's cool.
All comes out of the wash.
Yeah.
That's right. Rob, thanks so much for coming. I
Yes,
think that's
thank
a
you for
podcast.
coming on. I think that was.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
Yeah, anytime.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Build the cog railway. Bye, everyone.
Yes.
Bye.